First time we're ever doing live call-ins. All right, I got Manny on the stream. Manny, welcome. What is
Hey,
your
can you hear me?
question? Yeah.
Hey, perfect. To me, the current AI systems are more intelligent than almost everybody in different dimensions. It knows how to do a bunch of bad stuff
Yeah.
today, but none of those bad things are being done.
It sounds like your question is like, look, we're already past AGI and we're fine, so aren't we just going to be fine forever? Whereas in my mind, it's like, no, there is definitely another threshold that I'm worried about that we haven't met yet. By the way, you guys can feel free to turn on video too. It's more interesting for the viewers.
I have a face for radio.
What is your probability we get pocket nukes?
I wanted to ask what your probability of misalignment is.
How much above biology can you really get with AGI?
Rick and Morty, they have an episode about Mr. Meeseeks, these little blue creatures that you hit a button and you say, hey, help me do my golf swing. They help you with your golf swing and then they cease to exist. That's sort of the future I see for artificial intelligence.
Well, I mean, from my perspective, I see you as a superintelligence denier, right? Because you're basically just saying, yeah, there's not really such a thing as superintelligence the way Eliezer and Eliezer Yudkowksy think. Welcome to the Doom Debates End of Year 2025 live stream. DDA is saying hello from Belgium. Andrew Song is here from Make Sunsets. And you guys can do live call-ins. That's a new feature. First time we're ever doing live call-ins. I feel like YouTube shows don't do this for whatever reason, but it seems pretty cool. I want to try it. So let me give you guys the link how to do a live call-in. So you have two options if you want to do Q&A. You can type something in the YouTube chat, or you can click the live call-in link, and then I'll call on you there, hopefully. All right, I'm just checking if we're live on X, the Everything app. We are live on X. Hello, X. Wow, so many total viewers. 18 viewers on X. We've got how many viewers on YouTube? I can't really tell. I don't know, maybe like another 16 on YouTube, ballpark, if I'm looking at the right number. All right, wow. So that's a lot of human consciousness unified on watching this stream. All right, so yeah, let's get things started. We have 2 hours, and I think I'm using this YouTube feature right now. Let me see if it's working. If you're looking at YouTube, there's this thing called a super chat goal. YouTube keeps innovating on these new features. So it's asking me what I want to, what I'm going for in terms of donations. So let me click, I'll click $10 donations for the next 2 hours and share how you'll celebrate more Q&A. So I will extend the Q&A potentially like 45 minutes if I meet my goal of 10 super chats that all donate $10. Okay, that's not a meaningful amount of money for me or the show, but I'm just going to try it anyway. And if you guys want more Q&A, that's how to make it happen. Otherwise, we'll wrap it up in 2 hours. All right, so I'm looking at your questions here in the Q&A. So DDA is asking, is your PDoom rising or going down recently? All right, well, I think we have to make the distinction in terms of like intuitive versus rational beliefs. And I'm less wrong, a couple of years ago or like 10 years ago, there was this term, a leaf. It's like the word belief, but instead of BE at the beginning, you put an A at the beginning. It's like you're a leaf. So I had this emotional belief that we're not doomed just because I have the same pattern matching as everybody else in the tech industry, which is I've been in tech my whole life. Software is always fun. Software is always tame, right? So my intuition hasn't flipped the switch and it's like, well, actually, software can like really be like spunky. Software can really like take initiative to really screw with you in a way that's proactive, in a way that's like the CIA or the Israeli Mossad, like they, like a spear phishing attack. Like software is going to take initiative and really like attack you. So that hasn't gone into my intuition yet, or the intuition of pretty much anybody in the tech industry. And so on a gut level, every day that passes, every year that passes, where it's just like, oh my God, it's the next Claude, it's the next OpenAI, and everything's so great. And we can use this to like automate more tasks and make more money, and nobody's dying yet. Every year that passes, my A leaf is like, it's going to be fine, right? So now I wake up and I'm like, yeah, I bet we have like another 20 years of this. I bet I can like get to the end of my career and retire and everything will still be fine. But my rational belief is like, no, like there is a threshold approaching, and the threshold has a cascade effect. Like we're going to get to the threshold and it's not just going to be like a gradual slope up, it's going to start improving itself and it's going to go uncontrollable. Like I do think we're going to hit a plateau where the intuition just breaks, the pattern matching fails. And I think that's the single biggest disconnect between me and like random people on Twitter. I feel like everybody just refuses to believe that the qualitative patterns, it's just going to be qualitatively different when AI is like going rogue on its own initiative. So yeah, so what was actual DD's question? Okay, so PDM, so intuitive, and by the way, if you can hear that vacuum, I got some cleaners, but that should only last like a couple minutes. So yeah, so my A leaf has been getting lower, but my B leaf, my rational belief has been getting a little bit higher because like nothing is a surprise, but we're certainly not hitting a wall. And if you ask me to like predict timelines, I said this at the end of 2024. Time flies. It's already been a whole nother year of Doom debates. But every time I see these new AI releases come out, I do feel that goalpost moving effect. Like everything that I intuitively thought, okay, maybe there's a barrier here, maybe there's a barrier here. It really just feels like the horizon just keeps moving. Like, okay, if there is a barrier, it has to be like farther and farther along. And so extrapolating that experience, I just think that any milestone that we can name is just going to get crossed. And then the question is like, okay, well, what if there's like some meta milestone that's like all of those milestones actually fall into like one region of milestones and there's like this other region of milestones that's not going to get crossed. And like that could be true, right? I have some humility to this. I'm not here claiming that like I know exactly what intelligence is made out of and when we cross the threshold. I'm not claiming that. I just am confident that eventually it will be passed. So like I'm humble enough to say, you know what? There's a whopping 20% chance that we're going to make it all the way until 2050 before AI finally dials in like that last thing, that last piece of human brain specialness that we never figured out how to give it, and then we only figure it out in 2050. But I'm pretty set on what's going to happen like by 2050 or by 2100. Like the end game for me, there's kind of only one way for it to go, which is the AI going uncontrollable. But yeah, I'm humble enough to say that I don't know how many years or decades we have. All right, I noticed nobody's done the call-in yet, so I'm curious. If somebody wants to do the call-in, definitely feel free. And remember, there is a link at the top of the YouTube chat that you can click. It starts with Riverside, and it can get you into the call-in queue, and we can do a live call-in. So I will prioritize at least a few live call-ins if you want to do that. Otherwise, I will take your chat on YouTube. All right, so I'm reading the questions here. I'm going all the way to the top. So this guy, let me say that in Irish, asks, and apparently he's my number one fan according to YouTube. He says, have you tried to get YouTubers like the Internet of Bugs guy or David Gerard from Pivot to Your Eye on your show? Yeah, good question. Okay, so you guys are kind of funny because oftentimes in the comments, I see comments like, oh, you should get Cal Newport on the show, right? Or like, oh, you should get David Sachs on the show. And I'm like, guys, these people always are welcome on the show, right? So it's not like I have that much power to get people on the show. You have almost as much power as I have, right? So when random viewers of the show just tweet out at people like, hey, you should come on Doom Debates, that is 90% as effective as when I tweet out, you should come on Doom Debates. And then oftentimes, I almost all the time, I'll see that and then I'll respond and I'll be like, hey, you're invited. And that actually works better than me tweeting initially, like, who's this random guy? It's like more credibility when you guys are asking people to come on Doom Debates, and it's more credibility when you guys are liking it. But I don't really have an access channel to these guys. Like, unfortunately, I am actually just a random guy. I don't work at an AI company. Like, I don't have like any credentials besides a bachelor's from UC Berkeley, bachelor's in computer science, right? Besides that, I'm just a software engineer, like many of you. Um, so yeah, so if you want to get cool guests, it's kind of just like a one-off matter. Like if you want to know what it takes to get a guest, for example, like some of the coolest guests, like Max Tegmark, that was like a years long process where me and Max would like gradually interact more and more. And one time he said he likes my post. And then like my producer Ori, who's actually sick, he couldn't make it today, but my producer Ori actually worked with Max helping with his communications. And then finally Max agreed to come on Doom Debates. And now we have like a closer working relationship, I guess. But yeah, like it's a matter of time, and like Gary Marcus, friend of the show, I had to go back and forth with him for months before he'd come on the show. So yeah, so there's really no secret sauce to getting guests on the show. But I will say this, I think that when the show gets more popular, then the guests will actually ask me to be on the show. And some of our coolest guests actually did outbound to me, which is always awesome. And I do think that that's the end game. That's, the 2050 outcome. The same way 2050 outcome is Doom for AI. The 2050 outcome is Doom Debates is high profile and guests are reaching out to be on it. And again, it's just a question of what the timeline is, right? Like how soon can we get to that point? Yeah. All right. But specifically, okay. So back to the question. We're a long way from the question. The question said, did I get the Internet of Bugs guy or David Gerard from Pivot to AI? So the Internet of Bugs guy, I did send him a couple emails saying, hey, come on the show. And I didn't hear a response. And then David Gerard specifically, he's an interesting character. David Gerard. I've actually read a couple of his books back in the crypto days, and he and I were actually allies back in the day because we were both like dunking on crypto. We both thought that like Web3 was really stupid, and he had a lot of good analysis there. But now we basically are totally on the opposite sides of the spectrum. Like he thinks that AI is like all a big scam. I think he's in the same camp as Ed Zitron, and I have like no interaction with him these days. I think the guy has some good qualities. I also think there's stuff that I don't like about him. Like I think he like was all against like Eliezer Yudkowsky and Less Wrong, and he like updated a bunch of posts on Rational Wiki or maybe even Wikipedia, like dissing using like unfair criticism of Eliezer. So like, David Gerard, I don't really interact with him much, but if he wants to come on the show, he's actually welcome to. I guess I just haven't proactively reached out, but like I'm happy to have him on the show and we can hash out our differences and at least we can shake hands over the Web3 era being stupid. Reading your questions here. All right, Andrew Song with the $10 donation. Thank you, Andrew Song. Andrew Song of Make Sunsets. Yeah, by the way, shout out to Make Sunsets. You guys can actually go to just search Doom Debates Make Sunsets or Doom Debates Climate Change or Doom Debates SO2. We did this really cool episode a couple months ago where the takeaway from that episode is that climate change is like an overrated doom risk. Like, don't get me wrong, it is a doom risk, but the mainline scenario of climate change is like, okay, yeah, we drag economic growth down like 100 years pass and the economy is only 90% as big as it otherwise would have been, which is sure, that's a lot of value lost, 10%, but it's just nothing compared to like, oh, negative infinity. Like, okay, 90% smaller, but it's still growing like crazy. Sorry, 10% smaller, but it's still growing like crazy. That's kind of the median outcome of climate change. Whereas the median outcome of AI, from my perspective, is like, yep, just kill the entire future. So I see them as two different classes. And the other thing is that climate change is fundamentally a problem that's unilaterally solvable, at least for 50 years. Like, you literally just need one billionaire to dump SO2 into the atmosphere, and we're good on climate change for like 50 years. Whereas AI, there is probably no way to buy ourselves 50 years. All right, I got Manny on the stream. Manny, welcome. What
Hey,
is your
can you hear me?
question? Yeah.
Hey, perfect. Well, I had a bunch of topics, but I don't want to take up the whole time. But the first thing is,
All right, let's do one.
NVIDIA CEO was recently on Joe Rogan, and one of the arguments he gave there was the fact that today we have a similar problem with software, right? There's a bunch of cyber attacks going on, and he can sit there and talk to Joe while his team and his software is battling that, right? And in his perspective, we're going to enter a world where there's millions of AIs battling it out, and each one of us is going to have an AI agent or a bunch of AIs protecting us. Similar to, I have spam filtering on my phone, right? So what's your take on that? On yes, there's going to be an increasing level of skills that AIs are going to have or intelligence, but this stuff is being spread right now, right? To everybody.
Uh,
Everybody has the ability to use these tools, and everybody's like toolkit is upgrading.
right. Okay. So if I understand the question
Yeah.
correctly, it's just kind of saying like, what's the equilibrium? What's the offense defense balance with all these technologies? Correct.
It's more of a doesn't this lower your P doom, just the fact that everyone's defense is going to upgrade over time?
Yeah. So a couple things. I mean, this is always an interesting question to track. And I was just reading this guy, Gavin Leach, has this interesting analysis of 2025, like the frontier technologies, like all the different breakthroughs, and he rated them as like bad or good. What's their expected value? And one of the breakthroughs is that AI was able to go find a bunch of zero-day exploits in a bunch of software and then patch them, or at least tell the developers about them. And he rated it as good. But then in my mind, I'm like, is it really going to be a good equilibrium when AI can just easily find zero-day exploits? I mean, I guess as long as it finds them before they're released, right? I didn't think it was a very obvious good. Um, so, I mean, I will grant that it is hypothetically possible that defense wins against offense. I mean, in practice, it's kind of surprising that defense has won against offense this far, right? Like you go on the internet and there's all these viruses raging, there's all these
Yeah.
botnets, there's multi-billion-dollar companies getting taken down by viruses, and yet business does continue. Like the damage is still a small fraction of the value created. So I'm not going to totally write off the idea that we can keep getting these useful defensive agents. It's just I'll repeat what Eliezer Yudkowsky said when somebody asked him this in an interview, which is like, okay, great. So we have this equilibrium. It's just that eventually the AI is still going to go uncontrollable. Like that's ultimately the problem.
Right. I guess it's hard for me to engage in that hypothetical when I think there's more near-term risks, right? Like I'm more afraid of a bug being in, like a standard software bug being introduced somewhere that causes a lot of havoc. And the reason for that bug is just because someone checked in something that ChatGPT generated and they didn't pay attention, right? So I feel like there's a bunch of near-term risks that come with this technology before we talk about it from the perspective of like an AI with its own entity or with its own agency causing the problem, right? It's more of like a human accident or a human-led agent
Right.
causing the problem rather than an AI on its own.
Yeah, so I tend to actually, I mean, it's kind of ironic, but I think I know what you're talking about. Like, there's going to be all these non-fatal accidents or like, non-catastrophic accidents, accidents where like, okay, a business got shut down for a day, but nobody died. And when all of those things happen, it probably is, like you're saying, it probably is going to be, you can blame the human for those situations, right? And I'm not going to rush to blame the AI. If you look at my other podcast, Warning
Yeah.
Shots, I was just talking with John Sherman and Michael, and I was actually pulling him back from blaming AI on a bunch of different things. I'm like, guys, like if a robot malfunctions, I don't think that's that bad if the robot's doing better than the human on average. So I'm not like a pessimist in terms of like acceptable harm. So again, I just keep bringing this back to like I just think humanity is going to just become powerless, right? So it's like I have to keep your eye on the ball of what the real doom is because I'm
Yeah.
totally agreeing with you that before that point, it's probably not going to be that bad.
So in many ways, AI, to me, the current AI systems are more intelligent than almost everybody, right? In different dimensions. It doesn't, it's not as good as, like the way a human brain functions, but it's already good enough that it can beat somebody in many tests. Yet its capabilities or lack of agency prevent that difference in intelligence from anything bad happening. Do you know what I mean? Like it knows how to do a bunch of bad stuff
Yeah.
today, but none of those bad things are being done because
All right, all right. This is going to be last
yeah,
question, okay? And
sure.
then I'll let somebody else join the queue. Yeah, I mean, so I think it just gets to what we're defining as super
Yeah,
intelligence. So it sounds like your question is like, look, we're already past AGI and we're fine. So aren't we just going to be fine forever? Whereas in my mind, it's like, no, no, there is definitely another threshold that I'm worried about that we haven't met yet.
all
And
right.
that's also Eliezer Yudkowsky's position. Nice. All right,
Cool.
Manny, thanks so much
Yeah,
for
man.
coming on the stream,
Appreciate it.
man. First guest breaking the
All
ice.
right. Bye.
All right, later. Nice. All right, we got another person coming up live. Let's say hello to Jay.
Hey, how's it going? Can you hear me?
Hey, Jay. By the way, you guys can feel free to turn on video too. It's more interesting for the viewers.
I have a face for radio. Um, so I guess my question was, and I've been listening to Doom debates really since you've launched, and I've been a part of the AI sort of conversation. And
Nice,
one thing
man.
it's
Thanks
taught
for
me is
listening.
absolutely, and one thing it's taught me is certainly not as smart as I think I am, or maybe not even smart at all. But one of the questions, or one of the things that I thought, and I'll try and be brief here, is I think of AI as more of like automated intelligence rather than artificial intelligence. And there's a whole nother reasons for that. But I just think of it as a way of sort of, we've got a lot of smarts and now we've automated the way of getting that information out. And when I hear about the sort of PDOOM, the problem that I find myself having is how do we get to prompt windows and tokens and context where if I wanted an AI within the foreseeable next decade, we're talking about something that would have to kill me within 2 million tokens. And I have a hard time taking that serious as a real threat. Now, I understand that, if we wanted to push the technology down 50 years, obviously we'll get to what would be virtually limitless, I suppose. But I still think of it as almost an instance sort of thing. I'm having a hard time making the jump from I use this sort of intelligence as an instance purpose. Hey, wake up, build me a thing, disappear, go away. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Family Guy, or not Family Guy, Rick and Morty, where they have an episode about Mr. Meeseeks. And they're basically these little blue creatures that you hit a button and you say, hey, help me do my golf swing. They help you with your golf swing and then they cease to exist. And that's sort of the future I see for artificial intelligence, at least in my lifetime. And I'm having trouble bridging that gap.
Okay, well, I mean, from my perspective, I see you as a super intelligence denier, right? Because you're basically just saying, yeah, there's not really such a thing as super intelligence the way Liron and Eliezer Yudkowsky think. It's just always going to be like everything you think about an assistant doing and just like more features on the assistant, but it's still in this category of assistance. It's not in this category of like a real super intelligence. Is that a fair characterization?
I think that's totally fair. But I want to see the threat, right? And so I'm not like, I'm not trying to be like purposefully ignorant on the topic. I want to make sure that, yeah, if there's a real threat out there, I need to make sure that, yeah, I'm on the side that sees it and we're dealing with it. But I'm having trouble getting past that idea of wake up, do a thing, go to sleep.
Yeah, totally. Okay, well, I mean, the basic argument for why to expect super intelligence is, I mean, now let me try this analogy on you, okay? Think about like flight. Okay, so imagine birds dominate the skies, right? And birds are saying, like, look, maybe there'll be another bird. Maybe it'll be a bigger bird and it'll be able to fly longer, but it'll probably be slower. The faster birds will probably be more maneuverable, right? So birds kind of have what they're used to in the sky. Like, yeah, this is flight. Well, it's obviously not going to fly like above the atmosphere. There's not even any air there, right? So birds are kind of in this comfort zone of what flight means. But now we have, supersonic jets. We have rockets, right? We have the Starship going to Mars and the
Mm.
birds are like way in the dust, right? So this idea of flight, this thing that they thought that they understood, it turns out that they're just flying at like a certain level with certain capabilities, and the scale goes much higher than that, right? So is that metaphor doing anything for you? So obviously, flight would be analogous to like thinking skills.
Yeah, I mean, and like I say, I am definitely a viewer of your show, so I've heard that analogy, it makes sense in the context of we're probably not we don't represent the peak of intelligence, right? There's obviously we're somewhere on the mountain, but we're probably not at the top. Um, I guess the way that I see the technology being deployed, at least in my lifetime or in the near term future, it just seems to be deployed as sort of this. I guess what does it look like to say we're open, a ChatGPT 7 or 8, and it's always on and it's always thinking, versus ChatGPT 8 is like really smart and it does in 15 seconds what would take us days to do. And maybe that starts to blur the lines where it's like, well, I can kill you in 15 seconds because, where it would take a human, 15 days to come up with a plan and put it together, I can do it as a super intelligent AI in 35 seconds. And so I don't need to be always on and always thinking. And maybe that's where I'm going left.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think this is a valid question because I think a lot of people agree with you. Like a lot of people are still not getting that super intelligence is coming, so it is worth reviewing like what people should be expecting. So let me try another analogy on for you, okay? Imagine the year is like 0 AD, right? Remember there was no 0 AD, whatever, early on in that time, 2000 years ago, and you're talking to humans and you're like, "Hey, there's going to be a future civilization. It's not what you're used to. It's going to have like rocket ships. It's going to have like these magic screens, right? Like things, satellites orbiting the Earth. And you can just like call somebody and see their face. And even though they're far away, you'll see them instantly. Like you're communicating with them instantly because there's this thing called like the speed of light. So you can like travel around the world. Like your voice can travel around the world in like a tenth of a second, right? And like you're explaining all this to like past humans, and they're like, okay, like, but why? Well, why should I expect that? And imagine I'm just saying there's going to be like super intelligence because it's going this thing that you do in your head, like whenever you like go hunting, right? Whenever you like build your aqueduct, whenever you're doing like normal stuff, it turns out that you can interface with the universe a lot. Like you can iterate this thinking thing and you can iterate like empiricism, right? You can like get feedback about what like this magical power that you're using to have like a nice aqueduct. It turns out that the ceiling for that power is quite a lot higher than you intuitively expect. And I'm like, yeah, so imagine an alien that has like more of that power. And the crazy thing is I don't even have to tell them to imagine an alien because I could be like, imagine your own children that actually have very similar brains to you, but just like taking their sweet time, and then they're going to build all this magic. So already I think we're really bending the intuition of people from 2000 years ago about what humanity can do. So are you willing to like similarly bend your own intuition about what this successor AI is going to do?
Yeah, I think I can get there. I mean, I certainly, to a degree, that I'll continue to watch and continue to pay attention to this space as closely as I can. I think, yeah, I think it sounds like what you're saying is starting to make sense to me in the sense that like it's only a matter of time where maybe I can't envision what that form it will take, but ultimately on this trajectory, it will take a form that will be, not so good.
Yeah, I mean, the other analogy is animals before humans, right? So it's like animals are always used to like getting into brawls with each other, right? Or like similar like tribes, there's like tribal warfare. Like sometimes you get to step up where, like the Mongols were famous for doing this, right? Their combination of like getting on the horses and like getting really good at shooting weapons from the horses, and then they could like ride away and shoot you from far away, like ride up to you, shoot you, like whatever they were doing. Like the other armies, like they were not prepared for that, right? So that's why the
Right,
Mongols conquered like all of Asia or something, right? Like
right.
this can totally happen, right? Similarly, like the nuke, Japan was not prepared for a nuke, right? If they knew the nuke was coming, that would have fundamentally changed their war strategy. It would have just surrendered. So this stuff happens. Like discontinuous changes do happen.
That's true. That's true. Well, I thank you for taking my call. Thank you for taking the time. I'm
Yeah, yeah,
glad I
yeah.
got a
Thanks.
chance to talk with you.
Yeah, my pleasure, man. Thank you again for
Yeah,
watching the show.
absolutely. Thank you.
Great. All right, we got a whole queue of people come in. All right, let me just check the chat. I want to give a little bit of priority to people typing stuff in the chat. All right, my number 3 fan, Tomius3769. Google's ranking my fan, so that's cool. If you guys watch a lot of the show, or if you give me like hypes on YouTube, then you get like a badge that you're my fan, so I appreciate it. So Tomius3769 is saying, I don't think it is necessarily about more versus less intelligence. I think it has to do with AI being a simulation of thinking that lacks desire, need, or genuine agency. Um, and also Tomius was saying previously, what do you think it will take for AI to become an agential material, like a living organism? And also, I'm just reading all the Tomius comments. He also says, wouldn't take too much stock in what economists have to say about much other than economics, and sometimes not even that. All right. So yeah, let's talk about this idea of agency and like what AIs want, right? It's also a common type of question. Just to review, it's not necessarily about intelligence because AI is only simulating thinking. We haven't gotten the magical fluid into the AI that makes it want things. So here's the problem. If you simulate a kind of thinking that gets results, then you end up acting like something that wants something. And this is straight out of If Anyone Builds It, Everyone Dies. So they use the example of chess. So Douglas Hofstadter in the 70s, he was skeptical that AIs could ever play chess well. Hofstadter said, by the time the AI can play chess, it's going to tell you that it doesn't even feel like playing chess. It has all these other desires. It reminds me of David Deutsch, right? The Deutschians on Twitter often like to tell me, like, listen, you're testing the AI. The AI, the truly intelligent AI, is going to tell you, you know what, Leon, I don't even want to take your test, right? To them, that's like some sort of like ultra power move when the AI can say that it doesn't want to take your test. Whereas from my perspective, it's really, that doesn't impress me for the AI to say, I don't want to take your test, right? I can hard code a script that's just like very abrasive like that. I don't see that as an impressive achievement for the AI to output text like that. What is impressive is just being able to get results on larger and larger domains, right? What I mean by domain, like the universe is a domain, right? The game of chess is a domain. The game of chess is a narrow domain because you can formalize what all the different states are. And you can also formalize what all the different states are in our physical universe, but it's just like a vastly bigger set of states. And so it's harder to navigate. So if an agent was really effective at driving outcomes in our universe, the same way that a chess agent is effective at winning a chess, that effectiveness implies behavior that we see as agentic, that we see as wanting things. Let's do an example, okay? So imagine that you just have a delivery robot, okay? And you just measure the robot based on how well it's doing deliveries. All right, well, one day its path gets blocked, right? So it's walking the usual route to deliver something, DoorDash, whatever, right? And there's like a major construction zone and it's standing there in the construction zone. So intuitively, because the robot doesn't truly want anything, right, by some people's definition, intuitively you might think it's just going to like stand there and be hopeless because it doesn't want anything. But if it's been trained on a variety of scenarios of how to just get the delivery done, that training will lead to actions like, okay, let me route around this. And now imagine that there's like a gang that's trying to like harass it, whatever, throw stones at it. Well, if you train it hard enough, right, if it really is capable, that's my whole presumption of intelligence, is that it's able to hit objectives. Hitting objections means that when people try to derail you from the objectives, or when life or the universe try to derail you from the objectives, you don't let it derail you. So just, winning implies not getting derailed, which then implies essentially defending yourself, right? So if somebody's about to like throw a rock at it, maybe it'll duck, maybe it'll like run forward and grab the rock out of the person's hand. And from the person's perspective, it'll feel like, whoa, 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 where did this robot get all this moxie? Where did it get all this agency in order to want to take the rock out of my hand? And it's like, listen, it's just working backwards from getting the outcome, right? It can have no desires, no emotions. It can just be routing, right? It's a routing exercise, the same way that that your GPS can navigate you around a different turn, right? When you take a wrong turn, it can get you back on track. You can't derail your GPS. This whole concept of not getting derailed implies behavior that then intuitively looks to us like wanting an agency. So you don't have to put the agency in separately. You just have to measure it on results. Yeah, does that help? All right. Yeah. Let's do somebody else in the live chat. We're gonna do Staffin. Hey, Staffin.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I need to turn off YouTube. Thanks
Yeah.
for having me.
Yeah. Hey, by the way, next person, I want to let in somebody who's gonna turn their video on, okay? Because nobody's turned on video yet. So just so heads up, if you're in the queue right now, either leave the queue or turn your video on, and then maybe we'll do audio after. All right, go ahead, Stefan.
Apologies. I'm ugly, but I can show my face.
All right.
First
Cool,
of all,
appreciate it.
hi. thanks for doing all this stuff, the activism and all that, to begin with. I'm really impressed, and I appreciate you trying to save me and everyone I know from dying.
Hey, no
I'm
problem.
being
Thanks for coming
serious.
on.
It's nice. I have a question regarding like rhetoric. When it comes to communicating the threats. Uh, how do you view the option of not focusing on what actually is the genuine threat, or the biggest one, the AI being the problem itself, and instead the AI empowering dangerous people? For example, let's take a simile. Instead of trying to explain to my dad, like, oh, the AI might get its own agenda or whatever, I would say, there are racists out there. They want to exterminate everyone outside of their race. Imagine a teenager who's read a lot of 4chan getting a hold of a jailbroken ChatGPT 10, then he would be able to program a super virus and kill like 50 billion people. And then I can align my dad with that rhetoric towards I haven't tried this, but you get the point. Towards the point of regulating AI without having to go through all the hurdles of Doom Train and Doomtown, because people already grasp intuitively that, yeah, you're right, I did read about South African government did try to develop some kind of super racist virus. So that is a threat. We probably should have some type of international agreement. Do you think that's like plausible, or is it like a dumb tactic to use?
I mean, I think it's always an interesting angle to go down, this idea, and I think Rocco Miech is an example of somebody, and also I think Andrew Critch, if I remember correctly. These are people who say, "Hey, I'm not really worried about the AI going against its creators. I think we're going to successfully get AIs to do what their developers want, what their users want, but a lot of users with this ultimate power are quickly going to make a mess." So I think a good analogy there is like giving everybody nukes, where it's like, let's say that the nuke, we understand how to aim the nuke, everybody can aim the nuke, and of course, sometimes people accidentally blow themselves up with their own bombs, but forget about that part. Let's say everybody can successfully target and aim and launch their nukes. But then the problem is you just have a couple people who just press the button and cause the explosions anyway. Now, from my perspective, it's actually not that different. Like my perspective, something that I feel confident about is that the level of power in a small system, like even a laptop, eventually a laptop, but let's start with like a data center, okay, just one big data center. The amount of power to influence the future that you're going to get out of one data center, I think pretty soon is just going to be bigger than all humans combined. So I think I'm actually pretty confident whether it takes 5 years or 10 years or 20 or 30 years at the most. It's hard for me to imagine it taking more than that. I think you're going to have one data center, if not one laptop, that just can get more to happen than the entire human race. Like so roughly something like that. Um, and so that to me, that's the central consideration here is just a ridiculous amount of power, like more power than anybody has ever really thought much about. Like, what are the consequences of that much power in that small of a space? And then to your question, it's like, okay, well, what if everybody can control the power and the power will listen to the people compared to like the power runs away from the people? I don't see that big of a distinction because if you just have one person tell the power to do something that's not great, suddenly, even though it's technically obeying that person's order, it's just like having such disastrous consequences. It's not really a question of like, um, different people wielding the power. It's more of a question of like, does the power know to be like corrigible at that point? So, and I see it as more of a, corrigible meaning like not just like be like, hey, you told me to do this. Like you told me that you wanted like a bigger breakfast. So that's why I like cut down the entire rainforest, like crazy consequences. Like, does it know to like calibrate itself, to know how to like slow things down if things start going away from what the original master wanted? And let's say you say yes. Let's say yes, it's corrigible to the master. It never has like it never makes the master say like, oh no, what have I done? It always makes the master like happy with what he's done. So even in that case, then you run into a more interesting problem, I guess, right? That then you run into the multi-agent conflict of okay, all the masters are successfully not screwing themselves over, but there's so many different masters and there's like so much conflict. I guess that's like an interesting scenario. That's not the scenario I expect. I don't know if I personally have much interesting to say about that scenario, except that like I bet there's going to be negative surprises in that scenario, but maybe there'll be a positive surprise. How's that?
Yeah, precisely. Oh, sorry, I interrupted you.
No, that's pretty much it. Yeah, I don't have much more to say about that.
Yeah, because I agree with you. The difference is actually like trivial. If I'm killed by an AI acting on its own accord because it wants to make paper clips or whatever, or if I'm killed by some crazy Nazi who believes I have the wrong genetics or whatever, it just that when I see you trying to get people along the doom train, some people stop like ridiculously early. They stop on this whole, oh, can AIs really think or whatever. that's why I'm wondering if perhaps like having dual tracks. So like if you're trying to argue homosexuality with a deeply religious person, instead of saying like, well, God doesn't exist, so it doesn't matter what he thinks, I would be like, well, perhaps these progressive Muslims and Christians, they might have a point, even though I don't personally believe that argument holds, because obviously God doesn't have any opinion, in my opinion, because I don't believe God to exist, if you get what I'm getting at.
Yeah. I mean, this is probably one of the most interesting scenarios to think about because it's not just AI running away. It's like we actually have these interesting dilemmas. And somebody from the chat is asking, don't you think everybody with their own laptop is just going to defend themselves? And then this also just gets to the question of like, okay, well, what happens when you have all this power everywhere and some people are attacking and some people are defending? I tend to think that the universe itself is biased, has an attacker's bias. I actually think that the structure of our universe, think about like the game of life, like Conway's game of life. You guys know Conway's game of life. It's like this two-dimensional grid. And like it turns out you can have like full-on computers there, but they're like so fragile. It's like so easy to disrupt stuff there. I think our universe is similar in that sense, which is like you can just like throw a ton of energy into any part of the universe, and it's really hard to defend against that. I think it might even be impossible at the limit. Like I think you can like turn anything into a black hole just by like throwing a bunch of energy and mass at it. And it's like, how do you counter that? Right. It's like all you can do is like increase your own perimeter. So like
Yeah,
as a matter of physics, I just don't really see an equilibrium. And this also, I talked about this with Vitalik Buterin a couple months ago when he was saying like, deact, decentralize. I'm like, okay, Vitalik, but I don't think everybody can like wear a hard hat and like avoid the nuke that's coming at them.
yeah, you're obviously completely right. There are nukes, there aren't force fields. We're nowhere near developing force fields from Star Trek or whatever. But I won't take up any more of the time. Nice talking to you, and sincerely, super thank you for engaging yourself in the issue and fighting for our right to life, basically.
Yeah, thank you, Stefan. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, have a nice day. Bye.
You too. All right, we'll take another guest soon. All right, Quentin won't even let me read the username. But somebody named Quentin has donated $5 New Zealand dollars. I don't know how much that is. I'm gonna guess at least $3 American. So thanks for that. All right. So your question is, big tech can't help themselves other than to build such economical data centers as they suck up all our RAM GPUs, energy, and jobs. Bad idea. Yeah, fair point. Fair point, Quentin. Yeah, so definitely lots of interesting topics. I mean, I'm open to doing a podcast if somebody's thought that much about the attack defense balance, but um, yeah, I don't know, man. I'd be shocked if defense can hold out for that long. I often bring this up about how like we're not used to a world where there's like a serious effort at terrorism happening. Like, for example, there are some countries that are really hell bent on attacking other countries, but those countries tend to not be super strong. I mean, I guess the strongest country is like Russia, right? Russia has one of the strong or had one of the strongest militaries in the world, and they have nukes. And then surprisingly, they weren't that strong at successfully conquering Ukraine. Um, and it does seem to work like that pretty often. Although, World War I and II, Germany almost won both world wars. Like they were pretty close calls both times. So I don't think there's a law of the universe that defense wins. I think there's a bunch of lucky occasions where so far defense has been winning, but it's I don't see that as like an invariant. And you got to zoom out and realize that like this whole humanity thriving on Earth thing, right? This whole industrial revolution, like economic growth is exponential. Like this is really nice, but I just don't think this is representative of like the long future. All right, I think it's time for another guest. Let's see who we got here. Okay, Alec Harris.
Hey, what's up? I want to second the last guest. Thank you for doing this. I wanted to ask what your
My pleasure,
probability
man.
of misalignment is. Yeah. I wanted to ask what your probability of misalignment is given like outer alignment were solved and like how you would reason about that. So to formalize it a little more, like assuming we have misalignment at some point, the first AI that's like misaligned that like causes some kind of threat, assuming it's like outer aligned, like yeah, I guess like what's the reason that like given it was outer aligned, it like or like the probability given it was outer aligned, it like would be aligned. Does that make sense?
Okay, I'm not sure I fully got that. So you're saying, let's say we solve outer alignment, but then we get screwed on inner alignment, and you want to talk about a scenario like that? Did I understand that correctly?
Yeah, that's basically the idea. Like, yeah.
Okay, that's a tough one. Outer and inner, I feel like everybody shifts the definition a little bit, so it's tough. So like, okay, so getting outer alignment right is like we say what we want to the AI. I'm trying to remember that because I've actually seen a couple different definitions about it, or maybe I'm just confused. But I think it's like the AI success or no, okay, we get like the training feedback right. So we're giving it the right feedback, like we're giving it the right score. So we've got like the scoring function really aligned with our values. But the thing that it's learning, even though it's getting a high score using the true scoring function, it's still learning something that's not going to actually do what we want in, out of distribution, real world conditions. Is that kind of what you're going for?
Yeah, that's how I understand it.
Okay, so I'm not an expert at this, but I can take a stab at it. I guess the key there is just like, being out of distribution, right? So like we gave it the correct function. So like every time it did everything in training, we look at it and we like truly know whether it did the right thing or not. And maybe we even know whether it had good thoughts. Like maybe we can even look at its like thought stream during training and we're even giving the correct score to its thought stream. Like you did the right thing and you did it for the right reason. And that's why we're giving you maximum points. So we did a perfect job training in that sense. But it's still it's a black box method, even though it's like white box, we can see its thoughts or whatever, and we can even see its weights. It's still black box because we still don't really get at a deep level how its weights are really working so deeply that we'll know how they'll work in any scenario. So even though it seems white box, it's actually black box. It's input output based, right? So all we're doing is we're watching what it does and then scoring it. It's end to end. You might even call it consequentialist because we're not manually tuning the weights except by rewarding or except based on what actually happens or what actually gets printed. So that process, the standard thing that the Yudkowskians say is the result of that process is just that it learned something which is a near perfect fit in training, right? Like we can't catch it on anything in training, and then we set it out in the world, and it turns out that the interpolation, right, like what it learned in training, the way it's trying to like apply that knowledge to the real world, new points are going to come in, new states are going to come, and they're just like different states from the states in training. Like it didn't encounter the exact world when it was in training. And for the most part, it's going to be like, oh, this state is like similar to these other states that I train against. I know I need to do this. But it's just going to get into new states. And then in new states, it's going to have these thoughts like, oh my God, I'm going to get so many points by doing this. And then we're like, wait, no, that's not a lot of points. No, but it just didn't come up in training. So I think that's roughly what we're expecting, that like it'll always go out of distribution. And I think some people, and this is somewhat controversial. So the non-Yudkowskians, right? A lot of people who work at OpenAI, for instance, will probably tell you like, no, it's good. We're good. We're good. I think Quentin Pope is one of the smartest, most savviest people who will tell you like, no, you're good there. Like you're not going to have that scenario. It's just going to like always pick things that it thinks gets high scores and it's going to be right and we're fine. Yeah. What are your thoughts so far?
Yeah, it sounds to me like you're thinking about it very naively. Like here's a way, or like not naively as in like stupidly, but naively as in you're not making very many assumptions. So you're like, oh, here's a way that it could go wrong, which is that there's something we don't know. There is something that's hidden. A way it's a black box, which is this like extrapolation or interpolation part. It seems like I would think like maybe there is some assumptions we can make about how it will extrapolate. For example, someone might have thought that like, oh, LLMs are not going to be able to reason about the world. That's going to be too out of distribution. But like actually they do seem to be able to reason about the world. Like by looking at internet text, they seem to be able to make like work with the same kinds of concepts that we've like encoded in the internet text. So maybe similarly, like if we do a good job with outer alignment, they'll have like reasonable extrapolations, the kind of extrapolations we might hope for or expect for when it comes to human values in like slightly out of distribution scenarios.
Okay, I know what you're saying. So let me back up and try to explain to the viewers here. So you think that I'm kind of underestimating the AI, right? Like, you think that I don't have faith in it to understand what like morality is, to really look into our brains and see our morality. That's actually not my view. I actually have a lot of faith that it can do anything that's a matter of intelligence. So I think it's going to be almost perfectly intelligent. Like from our perspective, it's going to be perfectly intelligent. Like we're not really going to see any gaps in its intelligence. It's going to really surprise us by how much intelligence it has and like, way more than any human in the world. And so this idea of like piecing together what humans really meant, like it's going to know. The problem is that it's what it's actually going to care about. It's not going to care about, it's not going to be like, let me piece together what the guy who wrote my training function, what that person truly wanted, and then let me go do that. No. It's going to know what that person wanted, but it won't have been trained to use its understanding of what the person wanted to give the person what they want. Like it's going to be very clear. It's like, yes, you wanted this, and so you wrote a scoring function that worked like this. And now that I'm in the real world, what I'm going to do is interpolate the scoring function. I'm not going to give you the benefit of the doubt of what you wanted. I'm just going to go with the function because that's what my actual programming says to do.
It seems like there might be claims we could, or like reasons to think that the function would align with the programmer's intention, because it seems like there's some bias for something like compressed understandings of the function. And we might think that, particularly like if you have something that's pre-trained on the internet, then, and it also understands human morality, as you kind of like agreed to, then like this might be like a very clean compression of the reward if it were like well specified, which is like, you know, the assumption in this scenario.
Yeah, and that's another common thing people say is like, well, compression, right? These are like natural, there's like this natural region of things that it can learn, and it's just going to it's going to just get it. It's going to like get human morality. And look, I'm not 100% sure, okay? Right? I mean, I don't claim to be an expert at this. I haven't spent that much time studying it, but I tend to trust Eliezer Yudkowsky's thought on this, which is like there's an interesting article from Arbital, which is like an encyclopedia of articles that is mostly purely populated by Eliezer Yudkowsky. You can search for like Arbital edge instantiation. So Eliezer thinks that when you just give somebody a bunch of scores and then you say, okay, go optimize your scores, he thinks that it's actually a deep principle that you're actually going to find an edge that you don't like, that isn't actually like this compact natural cluster that you thought, but actually like this messed up edge in like this high dimensional simplex. Again, getting past what I actually understand, but I have reasons to think that to be pessimistic that it's just going to work out well. My other intuition just comes from like people cheating, right? Like just think about the idea of like the teacher. Think about all these like uh, well-intentioned teachers writing all these tests. Like, oh, this test is going to test the student's understanding. I have an intuition for how many ways there are to cheat at tests. Like, there's so many ways to cheat at tests. Maybe we've all had the experience of looking at the test and be like, okay, well, if the answer says this, the teacher must have been thinking this when the teacher made the multiple choice, so it would never be this. That wouldn't make sense. Otherwise, the teacher would write the question differently. There's like so many ways to cheat. And the thing is that you get the same score when you cheat. You see what I'm saying? So like we're actually raising cheaters. We're not raising teacher sympathizers. That's what I claim.
Yeah, it seems okay. So you're saying that even if it gets like all the correct scores, it could be doing something that extrapolates badly. So we would call this like cheating. Is that kind of the idea?
I mean, it's in training. It's going to be like, okay, how do I just get the answer fastest? And in some cases, it's going to be like the way to get the highest score fastest is by truly doing the moral thing because it's going to know. It's going to know where the teacher is coming from. It's going to know where humanity is coming from. It's going to know what we truly want as well as we know, probably, right? That because it's just a matter of intelligence. It's an objective fact about humans to like study what they truly want. Like that's, it's just a matter of science. And AIs are going to be amazing at science. The problem is that our training regime won't actually make them care because we'll just be giving them all these tests and they'll just be asking themselves what's the easiest way to get a high score on this test and then actually making us content. It's a property of the scoring function itself. It's a property of the problem that we're asking them to solve, the score maximization problem. That problem itself is going to have all these cheat regions, in my opinion. And so that is like an ongoing area of theoretical debate, like whether an AI will just like go into this basin of attraction where like, no, it's like totally good. Like goodness is this basin of attraction. I just don't see it. I think the basin of attraction is going to feel much more like cheating and being a huge dick and like manipulating us and like overthrowing the game board and then just like go maximizing its score without us. I feel like that's extremely likely to be the basin of attraction rather than like, oh no, it like totally gets goodness.
Yeah, and this is even if the reward is well specified, you would say. I guess I'm having trouble thinking of what a cheat
Yeah,
region
even if
looks
the
like
reward
in a
is
well
well specified, yeah.
specified reward. Sorry. Yeah, like what the cheat region looks like in a well specified reward.
Yeah, I mean, you can always just ask like, well, what if I just keep layering on? What if I have a million different scenarios, right? And I like judge what it's doing in all the different scenarios. And so the question you're asking is like, well, is it possible that it like always knows exactly what to do in all these scenarios, but then you put it in the real world and there's some real world scenario and then somehow it chokes on the real world scenario? I mean, the thing is that there really are going to be like a lot of scenarios, and like the problem is also that like there we I guess another element that comes into play here also is that our preferences also aren't simple, right? So like if the thing we're trying to get it to learn is like, maximum paperclips or maximum diamond or whatever, then I would have more hope that like all of the examples, like, look, there's more diamond here, there's more diamond here. It's just all about more diamond, okay? I have like more hope about getting it to do that compared to being like, well, we wanted you to, balance things like this. And here's like another scenario where it's like this war with these other aliens for the galaxy. I mean, that's the thing, right? Is whatever we're training it for, it's pretty quickly going to take its training and be like, oh, for me, it's easy to predict the next billion years of the universe's evolution. Like, I guess that factors into this too, is like the AI is going to have like a much wider scope of what it's looking at. Like the same way that Elon Musk, when Elon Musk sets out a project, Elon Musk is thinking like, okay, so how am I going to get to another planet in the next 20 years? Whereas like when you and I look at a project, we're like, okay, how do I make this website, you know, how do I make this website process like a few payments every day? And Elon Musk is like, how do I make, humanity go to Mars in 20 years? So the same way that like some agents have like a much bigger scope, I fully expect the AI to be like, okay, the next billion years, I roughly know how things are going to play out. I can pretty much shape the next billion years. I know how it's done. I'm like, I have plenty, I'm like overpowered at this task of shaping the next billion years. And then, and then the question is like, okay, well, how do I make the right moral trade-offs over the next billion years? The thing is that there's going to be a lot of subtle trade-offs. Like there's going to be new trade-offs. Like there's also going to be like a causal trade in like game theory against aliens. Like it's going to know about grabby aliens and it's going to be pre-planning how it's going to trade with these other aliens. And I just don't think it's that easy to generalize.
Okay, maybe like a counter argument is that like me as a human, I feel like I could make some like safe decisions that like in expectation would be considered like moral decisions. In that scenario, like I might be intelligence bottlenecked, but in terms of my intention. And so it seems like an AI that's like trained on a well specified function over like many examples, like surely it would make like at least as good moral decisions as I would like in expectation, for example, by just like be like playing it safe. It seems like it might learn these heuristics like during training if the function is like well specified, and so it should be able to like generalize these heuristics.
Okay, I'll take this as your last sub question. I think this is a great discussion, but also partly you're kind of like breaking up. So this will be my last response. So this gets into the conversation that I had with Jim Babcock a few months ago. If you search for like Doom Debates, Jim Babcock. And I think if I understand you correctly, it's like, look, we talk to these LLMs and these LLMs do a really good impression of like a person analyzing the situation. And I'm actually willing to grant, Eliezer Yudkowksy wasn't willing to grant this when I talked to him, but I'm personally open to granting that the LLMs are pretty close to just giving you the same responses as a human when you ask them morality questions. And then I think the bigger disconnect is going to happen when we get more powerful agents. So like, yeah, the LLMs will be our buddies, like me versus the LLM. We're both cool. But the problem is that the LLM based agent is also not super powerful. Like the LLM based agent is still kind of on our side of the divide compared to superintelligence. And then the LLM based agent is going to be like, hey, let's make a superintelligence. We'll work together. We're going to make a superintelligence. Let me write some code. It's going to use reinforcement learning. And the superintelligence is going to kind of poof into being just based on working backwards, right? It's just going to be this iterated process of like, look, you get results, like think about AlphaGo, right? Like self-play. You get results and you work backwards from how do you get the results, and you just become this agent that drives results. Like all we know about the agent is this is its basic structure. It's like a transformer or whatever, right? It won't be a transformer. It'll just be something. It'll have an architecture and it'll have a shitload of parameters and it'll reliably drive results. Like that's all we're going to know about it. And our buddy over here, the LLM that can also talk about morality, our buddy's going to be like, yeah, man, let's summon this thing. Like it's going to be like our enabler basically. It's just going to be, as clueless as us about how dangerous it is, or like, almost clueless, right? It's going to let us do it. And then this other agent comes along and it's just not going to, it's not going to run the same process of like thinking about the full human morality and making sure to take actions that get it, because that's different from how it optimizes its training. Like I just don't see a reliable process in this step. Yeah.
Cool.
All right, let's leave it at that. Thanks so much for the questions. I mean, this is definitely super deep discussion. Yeah, more deep than most guests even. Most guests basically are a waste of time in terms of like they ask like obvious questions, right? And then once in a while somebody's like, "Hey, let's talk about the actual open questions right now," which I appreciate. It's just I'm trying to most of what I do on Doom Debates these days is just trying to get the world up to speed of like, "Hey, we are at least facing a risk." Right? So that's what I focus my time on. All right, thanks very much, Alec Harris.
Thank you so much.
All right, I'm checking in the YouTube chat. All right, we got some big money here. Alpha Diversity 1344 just threw in 10 pounds, British pounds. Thank you for that. Appreciate it. Let's see. So yeah, so if you guys donate money and then you want to come to the live chat, if you want to click that link, I will prioritize you. This is pay to play, just like strip club rules apply. All right, I just put the call-in link in the chat. If anybody wants to click it. All right, we got another guest here. This guest is Mohammed Sai, S-Y. Hey, Mohammed, how's it going?
Hi, how's it going? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Sorry, can you hear me now? Okay, perfect. All right, I just wanted, I love your videos on Doom debates.
Thanks.
They're super interesting, the ones with George Hotz. And I just wanted to ask, what is your probability we get pocket nukes before we reach, total, near total surveillance state? That can track,
Okay, so
everything
pocket
in real
nukes
time.
before surveillance state. What are you saying?
The probability we get pocket nukes before near total surveillance state.
Right, because surveillance state is why people say that we shouldn't try to regulate or pause AI, because you'd hate to get a surveillance state with centralized humans in control. Okay, fair enough. I mean, look, I don't want a surveillance state either. I mean, that is my. I mean, I would hate for the government to go hardcore regulating social media or whatever, other technology or virtual reality. So, I'm sympathetic to not wanting a surveillance state and not wanting too much regulation. Let me see if I can mute just because I'm hearing some background noise. All right, I successfully muted you, so feel free to unmute yourself if you want to talk. All right, so the question is, will we get pocket nukes? So I mean, I know you're coming from. You're saying Liron wants to regulate AI so people don't get pocket nukes, but won't we just get a surveillance state? And if we didn't regulate people, wouldn't we potentially not get the pocket nukes and last a long time? I think that's where you're coming from. I mean, look, my concern personally is I think we're 5 years away from pocket nukes, and I'm not writing off that we may be 1 year away. This is also what people don't get. Okay, let me go on a mini tangent. AI 2027. I covered AI 2027 on the show. And everybody thought that AI 2027 was predicting that superintelligence is coming in 2027. But if you read it carefully, that's not what it was predicting. It was saying there's a probability distribution and there's the mode in 2027. The mode means that out of all the different peaks, that's a higher peak than the other peak. But mode doesn't even mean mean. So it was, typical nerd language, right? Being kind of confusing. But when they released AI 2027, they're really saying, hey, superintelligence might come in 2025 or 2026 or a distribution over a bunch of years and probably not after 2040 or 2050. Basically the same thing that I think. I'm actually on the same page as those guys, which a lot of people are. The Metaculus forecasters on average are. People who work on OpenAI are. Elon Musk is. I mean, it's actually funny how consensus this kind of distribution is among anybody who you would expect to know. Of course, not everybody, right? Gary Marcus thinks AI might be coming in 100 years. Amjad Masad from Replit has expressed skepticism that AI, it might need microtubules and stuff, whatever.
Jan LeCun.
Yeah. Right, Jan LeCun. Well, funny enough, Jan LeCun, the last thing he says is AI might be here in a really long time. It might be here in a decade. That's Jan LeCun's exact quote. So even Jan LeCun, I think, is subtly also now thinking that AI is not that far away. So anyway, I wanted to get that point out of the way, and I wanted to also point out that even though there's been a vibe shift where now people are scoffing at AI 27, they're they said 2027, and now even the authors are saying it's more like 2029. Okay, let's be clear though. Okay, it might even come in 2026. Still, we haven't foreclosed that possibility. Nobody should be smug that it's not coming in 2027, 26. I agree that it's probably not. I agree that would be somewhat surprising. But if you told me, no, it's coming in 2026, I'd just be oh, okay. I wouldn't even be that surprised. If you told me it's coming past 2100, then I would definitely wonder what took so long. So anyway, so there is a probability distribution, okay? That's how probabilities work. I feel like people are very confused about this basic concept that there's a whole distribution. All right. But we were talking about, everybody getting a personal nuke. So my answer to that question is well, I think superintelligence is more likely than not coming in 10 years, right? I mean, people the peak of people's distribution is around 2030 these days, maybe 2032. I think it's very likely coming by, let's say 2040. And so when you talk about pocket nukes, I mean, we're just talking about something that's pretty soon in our future, So my general position is we should try to regulate it before that point. I mean, that's all I'm saying. What do you think?
No, I think it makes sense. I think it makes sense because these models are increasingly weird. Because if you try GPT-5 for instance, GPT-5 is unable to play tic-tac-toe, a game of tic-tac-toe. I've tried. Sometimes it is able to do a draw, but sometimes it's just and those are it's a defined game state. Like all the moves required. Like it's not a game of chess, let's say. And the failure modes for
Yeah.
why it's unable to do that are quite weird. It's probably maybe its personality, because it knows all the game states and it knows the previous game state, and it also just seems to like lose every single time, which is weird. So yeah,
Yes,
they're
sir.
just like
All
it's
right.
like non-trivial to like try to understand how well it could do something in the future.
Yeah. All right. Fair enough. All right. Thank you for the question, Mohammed C. Gonna move on to the next guest here. Let's see. I've got a question from the chat. Alpha Diversity 1344 asks, is the Shoggoth metaphor doing more harm than good in AI risk discussions, framing danger as a hidden monster rather than fragile behavioral control that fails under scaling and agency? Yeah, I haven't invoked the Shoggoth metaphor for a while. When GPT-3 and 4 were coming out and everybody was finally turning their attention to LLMs, being like, what the hell? This is like passing the Turing test. Like everybody was really getting woken up, myself included. When that came up, there was this meme, AI not kill everyoneism memes or AI safety memes on Twitter. That account is really interesting. They've got a lot of good viral tweets. And I think that account might have popularized the picture of the Shoggoth, which is like this monster. Um, yeah, I don't know. Can I do screen share? Let me pull up a Shoggoth. See, Google Images, Shoggoth. All right, everybody, here is a Shoggoth. So the idea is that like you're talking to the happy face and it's being like really nice to you. It's, answering your questions. It's helping you out. But the rest of the body of the thing you're talking to is like so alien. Like it's not what you imagine. It's just kind of stringing you along and you may ask it something else and then it might bite your head off when you least expect it because the happy face was just a mask. So yeah, so that's the idea of the Shoggoth. And then the question is like, is that even an apt metaphor? Because I think, like I was saying before, I think we're getting to the point where like LLMs, sure, it's a Shoggoth inside and it's just like an actor, but it's getting so good at acting that just the happy face part, it's getting so hard to distinguish it from a real human. And I think the only way to distinguish it from a real human, I mean, we're finding jailbreaks, but besides that, we're getting closer and closer to like, okay, if you want to distinguish it, you have to like put it in, you have to ask it like this really novel question about like, how would you shape the universe or whatever. And even then, maybe it'll get it as good as a human. So like the happy face part of the Shoggoth might have like stretched around like the entire human form. So and at that point, it doesn't really matter what the rest of the Shoggoth is because if it's just operating on the happy face and the happy face has enough surface area, maybe we're actually good in that sense. And maybe the Shoggoth was misleading in that sense about LLMs. But then the problem is it does reinforcement learning. And then maybe reinforcement learning or whatever the next paradigm is, maybe that's the real Shoggoth because LLMs might just be in the nature of LLMs to like really just simulate humanity, but that's different from reinforcement learning or other paradigms where their nature is more like, no, just get results. See, because LLMs, they originally aren't, their only result that they've been training to get is predict the next word. And I guess we didn't have the failure mode where in order to predict the next word, it tried to like, freeze the universe or like try to manipulate your brain into like telling it into like knowing what the next word is by like controlling your like crazy failure modes like that. I guess we never ran into those. Like, I guess predicting the next word was safer than I expected and maybe safer than what the Shoggoth meme implied. So I'm happy to update on that, being like, okay, and I think this is also what Stephen Burns said. If you go and watch my episode with Stephen Burns, I think this was basically his conclusion. And I think this was Jim Babcock's conclusion. I think this is a lot of people's conclusion of like, okay, with LLMs, we did hit this nice pocket of safety where we're probably not going to screw ourselves just by predicting the next word. Unless maybe if we scale up like so much, maybe then just the task of predicting the next word could become dangerous, but it probably won't be in a practical, few years or whatever. Okay. So yeah, I mean, and you could say that I'm moving goalposts as a doomer, right? Like maybe that's a valid accusation of like I said that was going to be true for LMs. Now I'm moving it for reinforcement learning, but I'm willing to ponder whether I've moved the goalpost too much. But I still think I'm probably right that in the next paradigm where we're just saying, hey, do anything in the universe, don't just predict the next word, like just drive an outcome, right? Like maximize money with the entire universe as your domain instead of just like pick what word to output, like pick what action to take in the universe. I think that moving the goalpost there is like pretty legitimate, or like not the goalpost, but like the threshold of where I get scared to be like, okay, I'm not scared here where it predicts the next word. I'm scared here where it like takes actions in the universe. I still think that's a reason to be scared. I'm not willing to concede yet, right? I'm convincible, but I'm still scared. Let's see what people in the chat are saying. Alex Tepps saying we didn't hit a pocket of safety. Obviously, the tool humans tried to make is probably safe for humans. I don't think it's that obvious. Okay, being scared is fair. We're talking about the Shoggoth. I think this is an interesting question because like the Shoggoth memes talking about like the body of the LLM behind the mask being so dangerous, maybe that was in fact misguided. So this is like a better than average question from Alpha Diversity with 1344. I'm not just building you up because you're my number one YouTube fan. I do think that this question is something that we should account for, the Shoggoth question. Um, I wonder if we can repurpose the Shoggoth and say that when you do reinforcement learning, you're getting a cheater. And the happy face is just somebody who's cheating, right? So the teacher's like, wow, my star student got 100% on this test. And then it turns out that the student just has no idea about the teacher's material. And, maybe an English class is the best metaphor for this because I've been to some English classes in my day where like the teacher was like, so lame, like telling us to analyze books and like talk about the symbolism stuff. And I always hated the symbolism because I learned that a lot of times you can turn in an essay in an English class about the symbolism of the essay, and the author will be on record saying that they didn't even mean for that to be the symbolism, and you can still get an A in your English class interpreting the symbolism as something that the author didn't even mean. So you're basically just like riffing, BSing, which like some people find that an enjoyable exercise, but for me as a nerd who just cared about like truth and like things that have actual stakes, trying to like BS about symbolism, like I really resent that I had to do that. So if I could have just cheated my way through the class, or just like if I, and these days I would cheat, right? I would use an LLM, and like sure enough, remember when Liam Robbins was on the program talking about students cheating? Like I'm sure that's what he's doing. Like I'm sure that's what his friends are doing. Right? I don't want to say anything about Liam. So I'm sure people are cheating like that. And from the teacher's perspective, the teacher is naive about LLMs. Maybe the teacher is saying, wow, this student really gets it. Like, I'm so happy that this student has clearly been paying attention to my teachings. This student really gets symbolism, but, of course, they're just like BSing it. So the cheater's face is like, maybe we need like a new image, right? What does a cheater look like? Or maybe we just reuse the Shoggoth. But yeah, anyway, excellent question. I'll be thinking more about that. All right, I got another guest here, a live guest. Let's say hello to Lyle.
You hear me?
Yeah, thanks for turning the video on.
Oh, I got this terrible lag.
Hey Lyle, if you're listening to me through the YouTube, maybe don't do that. Only listen to me through Riverside because YouTube has a 2-second delay.
No, it's way worse than that. All right, I'll just
Okay.
talk, and then the conversation is interrupted. I'll just talk. So, there's a question about the format of the show. So you have the big question: what's your PDoom? And it seems like most guests who agree to go along with it only sort of half go along with it. What they really give you is a conditional probability of doom conditional on business as usual, or no giant Chernobyl-like event, or no treaty, or something like that, right? And then they'll decline to give you a probability that business as usual actually happens. So I think that's pretty much how Yudkowsky answers.
Oh shit! Hold on, I accidentally moved Lyle to be backstage. Fat finger. Let me see if I can get him back. Lyle, can you hear me? You're back.
All right. Well, this is the gist of my question. I don't know if you can hear me. That was the gist of my question. Do you think you should reformat the big question? That was the question.
Oh, reformat. Yeah. Okay. I mean, yeah. Look, PDoom. It is definitely, there's a lot of nuances, right? And Rocco famously says that he thinks PDoom is negative 20% because he thinks it only makes sense to ask about PDoom compared to without AI. And he's like so pessimistic on the world without AI because he thinks like the birth rate is going to 0, yada, yada, yada. So, I mean, yeah, look, I'm happy to ask a different question. It's just, I see it as a starting point for the conversation. If I had to ask the most nuanced question, then it would be like a long question with a lot of like a multiple choice question. And you could imagine that I just ask people a bunch of questions like, hey, if there was no AI, what do you think would happen, right? You can imagine I do like a whole interview, and then finally I'm like, okay, based on all that, then your PDoom condition on AI is this. I mean, I could format it one way. I just think that it's still interesting enough to have PDoom as the first question, and then based on what they say, then clarify more. And because we're working with such wide ranges, where it's like, okay, I say my PDoom is 50%, but could I wake up tomorrow and say it's 80%? Sure, because I don't feel like I can even make that big of a distinction. I just feel confident saying it's not 99%, it's not 1%. I don't even think it's 10%. I think it's clearly higher than 10%. When people accuse rationalists or AI doomers of being like, you're making up these numbers. No. Let me clarify something, okay? Yeah, I'm making up 50 as opposed to 40, but I'm not making up 50 as opposed to 10. I'm not making up the orders of magnitude. So there is some degree, there is some quantifiable degree where you do actually know what you believe and you feel pretty confident about it. It just deals with bigger numbers or bigger geometric multipliers, right? So if you convert everything to odds ratios, 1 to 100 is like a dumb number to say, in my opinion. Like some of my guests say, it's like the probability is like 1 to 99. I think that's dumb. I think anything where you're saying close to 1 to 1, 2 to 1, 3 to 1, okay, sure, that's still sane. So I'm just saying the sane range is clearly in that range. And people think that like when you move to quantify something, you've like put this huge burden on yourself because you're going to quantify it. But I have a superpower. It's called quantifying entire orders of magnitude. So you just have this huge numerical range, and nevertheless, it's like still good enough. And I have a very natural capacity or a natural tendency to think like that. I think it's related to why like I like being in the startup game. I like doing angel investing because like when I'm investing in something, I don't like to be like, okay, I'm going to buy this stock and then it's going to go up like 7% a year and then I'll like double it when I retire. Like I don't really like to think like that. I like to be like, okay, how can I just buy one thing that just goes up by 500x and then that'll just be all my income? I like to simplify it like that, right? And I'm willing to like buy 100 other things if I can just get that one thing. So that's like how I tend to think, where I'm like, I just want one thing to have like a really big order of magnitude and solve it. And Doom is a case where I think I can say that it's overwhelmingly likely, or I think there's an overwhelming consequence if the AI does in fact become uncontrollable and super intelligent. And I think the probability is overwhelmingly significant, meaning more than 10%. And so this is just a situation where we have the luxury of not trying to pinpoint exactly what these numbers are because they're well within the range where we should be freaking out. Like there's not for me, there's not really any argument why we shouldn't freak out right now. And that's why I often talk about fear mongering. And I wouldn't say this about anything. I think there's a lot of things that are within a nuanced range. And usually when I encounter something that's within a nuanced range, I just like list the nuances and then I just like bow out. Like I'm not somebody who like enjoys the nuance that much, right? I'm just aware of the nuance. And I think that in the case of AI Doom, there's not that much nuance to the conclusion that we should clearly be freaking out. All right. So yeah, well, currently the queue is empty for the live chat. If anybody wants to ask another live chat question, here is that, or live call-in link. Here it is again in YouTube. Let's see what people are saying in the chat room. Somebody say, Luke McNally is saying, Leron, I would love to see you do more calls to action in your videos. You do often mention pause AI, but I'd love to see you suggest control AI and micro commit. Weekly email of less than 10-minute tasks regarding X risk. Okay, yeah, I could do more calls to action. I mean, generally, I'm pretty open when people email me something that I think is notable. Like recently, I did AIsafety.com, a really cool site indexing everything about AI safety, including places to donate to or help out. When people email me and I take a look and I'm like, yeah, this is notable, I'm usually willing to give like a shout out at the end of an episode. Because my audience size is only like a few thousand views per episode. I don't think it's like a huge impact, but it's like, it's better than nothing. I think we can firmly say that me doing a shout out at the end of the episode is one notch better than nothing, which is, it's an achievement, right? It wasn't true in the first few months of the show. I mean, I actually meant to say this. Speaking of calls to action, I did select a couple of calls to action that I wanted to mention in this very live stream. So how's that for a segue? Let me open a new tab. I'm going to screen share. So first of all, I got to pimp my own show, doomdebates.com/donate. Everybody go to doomdebates.com/donate. You can donate to Doom Debates. That is a thing you can do. And the question you should ask yourself is, what would it take to make Doom Debates worthy of your donation? Would it take having a mechanism to lower P-Doom? Because I think we do have that. I think we have a mechanism to realistically lower P-Doom. And the mechanism is to get the average person to even realize that this is a freak out issue and they should vote based on it, as opposed to totally ignoring it. It's kind of funny. I live in Saratoga Springs, New York now, which is like a suburb where nobody's thinking about AI Doom. And I'm just like meeting people here in the community and having like friendly chats. And I'm happy to socialize. Like, I'm making new friends. I moved here recently from Silicon Valley. And it's just funny because I'm not shy about telling them that I'm an AI doomer. And like, this is like a big thing that I'm thinking about. And yet, I'm still chill. So I don't think I have to eject from the conversation just because I'm an AI doomer. I think you can still have a good time. You can have a nice time meeting people and socializing while also, if the topic comes up, mentioning that you're an AI doomer. But it also is disappointing to me that this is really like, their typical reaction is like, because I'm being like pleasant, right? Because I'm still having a good time with them. I'm not like making it negative. I'm not like rooting the vibe. I'm still, I'm talking about it in an entertaining way. So their typical reaction is like, oh yeah, huh, that's kind of interesting. Oh, and you do like a podcast about it. Okay, that's kind of interesting. Like I don't think that I've like killed the interaction. Okay. I think I have enough social savviness to be like, okay, we're still fine, but it's still it's still kind of unfortunate that they have to hear it from me this late in the game, right? It's like T minus 5 years. I mean, if you look at Metaculus, right, 2032, currently it's almost 2026, right? So it's like 6 years until like potentially losing control, that timeline like that. And they're like, their whole reaction is like, oh, that's interesting. Like they have zero context about anything I'm saying. So anyway, my point here is that we can actually make a difference by getting the message out enough in a mainstream format, hosting these debates with people that are worth paying attention to, getting more mind share. And suddenly these average people, these average citizens of Earth will already realize that this issue is urgent, right? Like Bernie Sanders actually realized it the other day, right? So we're definitely getting traction, but I think that it's a question of time, right? So going back to the point, I'm actually making a point here about Doom Debates. When you donate to Doom Debates, you're donating to a show that has a plan to raise people's awareness and make them realize that this issue is actually urgent so that when they get in that voting booth and there's a candidate like Alex Boris saying, "Hey, we're gonna negotiate a treaty, right? Like we're gonna actually take action on this," then their eyes will be opened. Okay, so that's what we're doing at Doom Debates. Our mission is to raise awareness of AI existential risk, imminent AI existential risk, to fearmonger, so the average person realizes that this is actually urgent, that they should pay attention to it. And once they're paying attention to it, I actually believe that the average person will be like, "Yeah, I can see this is the issue," because that is the reaction that I get. And I don't just think people are being polite. I think that people, the normies of the world, right? The people who don't obsess about this every day, who aren't even in the tech industry, when they hear this, they're like, yeah, this makes sense. Let's regulate it. And it literally is just a matter of raising awareness. Okay. Now we also have another mission, which is to raise the quality of debate. I do think our society is kind of stunted in our ability to debate. Like I've been shocked at how low quality the debate is. I first started seeing it on Twitter, X. I first started saying like, wait a minute, these are people that I consider intelligent, and they're going on X and they're like character assassinating people. They're like personally insulting people, like questioning people's motives instead of just like engaging object level with simple arguments. So I do think there's a lot of work to be done, just like leveling up our society, the ability to have debates. If you watch Doom Debates, there's actually a lot of you guys who watch Doom Debates and you don't even watch it for the Doom. You watch it for the debate because you think it's a breath of fresh air to see a debate where the people aren't just trying to like score points, rhetorical points. They're actually getting to the substance of the disagreement. I feel like we're kind of starved for substantive debates that are like that. And that's the other mission of Doom Debates, is to elevate society's capacity to productively debate. Eliezer Yudkowksy often points out that he thinks that society in like the 1950s, like the earlier 20th century, had more of this capacity, like whether it's like long attention spans or I don't know, just like norms to discourse better. This is like something that we've lost, and I think Doom Debates is helping regain it. Right, it's like a 2-hour debate. We model having these 2-hour good faith debates where we find each other's cruxes. All right, yeah, Doom Debates is so great, and you should definitely donate to it. And if you do donate to it, I have to point out that donating $10 doesn't move the needle. I've set the threshold at $1,000 plus to consider you a mission partner. Mission partner is somebody who actually materially changes the show's budget so that we can do more stuff. For example, producer Ori, he couldn't be here today because he's sick, but this is his full-time job. So we actually have a full-time employee. I myself am working for free. So if you're donating to Doom Debates, you're not going into Leron's bank account. You're entirely going to pay show expenses. And there's actually a really big show expense happening right now, which is this studio, which is really just an extra bedroom. This studio that I'm working out of right now is actually going to be massively upgraded in like a month or two. This is going to look like a super professional studio. Okay, so we are not dicking around here on Doom Debates. I and producer Ori and all of our supporters, our mission partners in the Mission Partners Discord, we are all committed to actually moving the discourse. Remember, we had Max Tegmark and Dean Ball. Dean Ball was instrumental in crafting America's AI action plan. We're not dicking around here, okay? That is the most representative episode of what we're here to do in Doom Debates. No offense to, for example, Devin Elliott, my most recent episode. That's actually not representative of what we're trying to do here. What's representative of what we're trying to do here is get the decision makers in the room and have them account for their actions and have them explain their perspectives, right? So for example, you got to hear that Dean Ball's perspective is that P Doom is 0.01%, and he was instrumental in crafting America's AI action plan. That's what we're here to do in Doom Debates. Seems like an important job. And that is why when we do the end of the year and you're asking how to get that tax deduction, right? For those of you who are used to getting the tax deduction for doing charity, you could write Doom Debates on that line. Okay. And yeah, because like we're doing a big studio build, right? I forgot. See, I got a lot of threads going. Okay. So we're doing a big studio build out because think about this. Okay. David Sachs, the crypto czar, AI and crypto czar, Think about a cabinet secretary in the White House asking whether they should come on Doom Debates. They should. But are they going to come on a show that looks like this? No. I have a DSLR camera, but that's not going to cut it. Okay. They need higher quality. They need to look at the show and be like, yes, this is a show where I can imagine myself appearing on, and that's why I'm going to go on this show. And so if you give me a couple months, this is already in progress. There's actually a bunch of boxes off screen that you can't see because we're doing a crazy expensive build out of a whole new Doom Debate studio. So this is all part of the theme of like, we're not dicking around. We actually have a mechanism of action to have our society engage with this incredibly important thing that's happening really soon. And yeah, so that is Doom Debates. There's more at doomdebates.com/donate. Hopefully a couple of you guys donate. The more the better. All right. Now let me tell you about some other things that you can donate to as well. So there is Pause AI. I'm a member of Pause AI. So pauseai.info, pulling it up here on the screen share. You can see their headline is "Don't Let AI Companies Gamble with Our Future." So just like Doom Debates, the mechanism of action is to raise awareness. Pause AI, the mechanism of action is to have protests and basically do government actions. More people calling their congressman or woman, stuff like that. Also raising awareness, also holding events. They're doing local chapters. I think at this point, this is one of the only levers that can possibly work, is building a grassroots movement to Pause AI. I don't think it's realistic to expect leaders to lead from the front. I think leaders mostly lead from behind. And so you just need a movement. You need people out on the street protesting. And so I support Pause AI. I encourage you to go to pauseai.info and donate. But there's also another Pause AI. It's called Pause AI US. So check this out. I'm actually on pauseai-us.org. And I'm actually more familiar with Pause AI US. That one is, so the Pause AI US, it's led by Holly Elmore. My friend, go search for Doom Debates Holly Elmore. We had a very interesting episode where we talked about rationalists being a circular firing squad. I thought that was a fun and interesting episode. So Pause AI US, we do protests in the US. All of the protests that I've done in the last couple of years, if you've ever seen me like holding a megaphone in San Francisco, talking at Anthropic, telling them why they suck, that was a Pause AI US protest. And so they do that. And they also do like government writing campaigns. So they get a bunch of people to call the government. I think they've done it like 800 times or something. They've gotten like 800 calls going in, which, it's a start, right? I'd love to see like 500,000, but 800 still takes work, and they're scaling up. They're hiring staff. So I encourage you to go to pauseai-us.org, and they have a donate button. So that's already 3 different organizations you can donate to. I mean, there's a lot of different things you should donate to. If you go to aisafety.com, they have a whole like fundraising section. So I really just wanted to highlight like a couple during this podcast. Okay, so I mentioned Doom Debates. I mentioned Pause AI. I mentioned Pause AI US. I have a couple more I want to mention. Everybody should check out lesswrong.com. Obviously, Less Wrong, it's a really great rationality site. Even though I've accused them of being a circular firing squad and not supporting if anyone builds it, everyone dies quite enough. That's okay. I still really appreciate the work they're doing and the work that Litecoin Infrastructure is doing. And you can see here, if you go to the front page and search for like donate. Okay, their own donation post. I was going to say it moved off the front page, but no, it's got a section here. Okay, so if you click Litecoin Infrastructure Fundraiser, okay, you can read this whole thing. I was actually very impressed by this post. I consider this post like so good. It's funny, I'm an angel investor and I often invest in startups, less so now, more so when I thought timelines were longer. And so I've got like dozens of random small startups that I've invested in. And typically when you invest in a startup, the amount of information that you get on all of their progress is less than the amount of information in this one post. So this would be considered like an amazingly informative report of like really good, like high quality work with high quality reporting. Like this is just so impressive. And I personally donated a somewhat substantial amount this year. Even though I'm asking you guys to donate, I'm here donating to Less Wrong. How about that, right? I'm paying it forward. And then one more site to donate to is, of course, intelligence.org, the Machine Intelligence Research Institute. Our 2025 fundraiser is live. I mean, look, Doom Debates wouldn't be here without Miri, Eliezer Yudkowksy. I've referred to him as the most important thinker alive. I stand by that statement. You can search for Liron Shapira, YouTube, Eliezer Yudkowksy. And yeah, so they've got a fundraiser. So look at this. They've raised $512,000. And it looks like they've got a stretch goal here of $6 million. Okay, so they need to raise another $5.5 million. So, if anybody has a couple million lying around, I do actually recommend donating it to Miri. I know that's a lot of money and probably nobody watching the stream has that. But if you do, it's hard to make a bigger impact than donating to one of the organizations that I mentioned. Okay, Doom Debates, Pause AI, Pause AI US, Litecoin Infrastructure, otherwise known as Less Wrong, and the Machine Intelligence Research Institute, or MIRI. All right, infomercials over. Yeah, hopefully that's so some of you guys take that to heart. And remember, December, you want to get that tax break. All of everything I just mentioned right now is 501c3, so you can deduct it from your income. Back to the show. All right, we got a live guest here, and we've got half hour left in the stream, so you guys definitely can line up if you want to be a live guest. Let's hear from Yakub. It's kind of similar to Jacob, but in another language. Hey, Yakub.
In Arabic.
Oh, cool. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. Maybe I should turn off YouTube. So the question I have for you is, I guess over time I've been thinking a lot about AGI and what it would take. And it seems to me that humans are like made of nanotechnology, like if you see the cell and how amazing it is. So like how much above biology can you really get with AGI?
Yeah. Great question. I mean, look, the cell is quite amazing. It's quite amazing. That's definitely one of the coolest things to be looking at is a cell. It's like freaking crazy. I mean, from what little, I mean, I've probably spent like 100 hours in my life looking at cells just because like in high school, they make you do quite a lot of biology. And then I did like a genetics class in college. So I've been impressed by what I've seen from like nature engineering cells. Um, it's like so great. You know, I showed my 6-year-old son a video of like an animation of like how DNA synthesis works, and there's like proteins crawling along, like the synthase protein, like just crawling along, like copying one base pair at a time. Like I don't understand how all that stuff works. And apparently, like everything just bumps into everything else. So like anytime that you have two things that like could react to do something interesting, you just like wait a little bit, and there's like so much bumping going on that it just like comes by and bumps like it's like circulating like crazy over in there. It's like it's a crazy place to sell. Okay. And yeah, obviously it's had like billions of years to evolve, many generations of selection. So getting to your question, right, is like how do we think we can engineer something better than that? Um, well, I mean, look, it's a pretty simple extrapolation, right? I mean, it's generally whenever we have a metric that we care about, and we just apply like a decade to it, right? Let's say 50 years to be generous. We just seem to always succeed. Or like, okay, maybe not always, right? But like we just succeed again and again and again on really important dimensions. So you could be like, well, hold on, here's dimensions that we did succeed on, here's dimensions that we don't succeed on. But there's so many dimensions that we do succeed on that you can't look away from those dimensions. I mean, look, flight, we wanted to fly better than birds, or at least we wanted to fly as good as birds. We ended up on many dimensions flying better than birds. We have some robots that are trying to do like the subtle kind of wing motions that birds are doing to get like more dexterity or whatever. Okay, those still have a ways to go. But certainly in terms of like mass, also power efficiency, our most efficient gliders and flyers are better than birds. I was pretty surprised. I shouldn't have been in retrospect, but I was pretty surprised to learn that in terms of converting sunlight to energy, our solar panels are now significantly better than leaves. It's like you'd think nature, with like a billion years to optimize plants, you'd think they'd be good at solar panels, but it turns out, they're under other constraints. The plant also has to carry out other life functions, and it actually like can't get too hot because there's like heat constraints on like the other cellular functions that are happening there. So it turns out it's only like an okay solar panel. So we've already surpassed it as a solar panel. Um, so I mean, don't get me wrong, like
So
the
I'm
cell is doing
guessing
a lot. Yeah, go ahead.
So what I mean by that is like, how can you really get smarter than humans without like actually paying a lot of energy costs? So like right now, the human brain like uses 20 watts, and then the data centers that we have like use like gigawatts of energy. So what I'm wondering is, can you really get smarter than humans without actually like paying a lot of energy costs? And I think that's like where biology comes in. Like the human brain is very energy efficient, and it's not clear to me that you can get super intelligence very freely without
Mhm.
paying a lot of energy costs with it.
Oh, got it, got it. Okay, well, let me run with that premise. I mean, okay, the human brain is super efficient. I mean, so last I checked, the human brain in terms of like the computation that it does, like to erase one bit or whatever. Okay, not my area of expertise, but there's some, there's the Landauer limit, which is like you have to use up this much energy to essentially do like one operation of computation, and the human brain is 6 orders of magnitude away from that. So even when you say the human brain is really energy efficient, I think we can agree that like the laws of physics allow something better. And then your claim is just like, okay, that's fine. But the amount of complexity that it even took to get here suggests that it might be really hard to do better than 6 orders of magnitude worse than the Landauer limit, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so let's run with that premise. Okay, let's say, yep, 6 hours, 6 orders of magnitude worse, a million times worse than the land hour limit. That's like as good as it gets without like millions of years of engineering. Okay, so we take the current level of energy efficiency and we take the human brain, which is like 20 watts, and we just give it 20 megawatts, right? We just build a data center. I mean, data centers are like gigawatt scale, right? So, okay, so it's equally energy efficient, but it's still going to be much more powerful.
Oh, so you mean like then that system would be like smarter than humans?
Yeah, exactly, right. So if your issue is that the cell or the biological organism that is the brain is like so energy efficient, okay, but it's never had 20 megawatts before.
Yeah, yeah, I can see that. I guess like where I see the discrepancy is like when Yudkowsky talks about like nanotechnology, and he talks about like how um the grass can like live on the environment, and like AI could make better nanotechnology than that. It's not clear to me that that nanotechnology is going to be better than biology when you consider like everything.
Yeah. Okay, so this is specifically about Eliezer Yudkowsky's claims that once the AI is like sufficiently intelligent and got to run a few experiments, a very realistic endgame, which I actually fully agree with, a very realistic endgame of what this AI can do is design life from scratch, a new kind of life, and it'll actually have upgraded building blocks. Eliezer likes to talk about diamondoid bacteria because Eliezer just notices that proteins are just great at being easy to build because it's like this playset, right? Like you can literally get a one-dimensional chain, right? The crazy, it's actually crazy that this works, right? So the DNA turns into RNA, and then the RNA goes to the it goes to like the tRNA, the ribosome, right? And then it turns into a one-dimensional chain of amino acids, but then the chain folds up. So this is incredible from the perspective of like easy manufacturing, but it's not great from the perspective of like the end product being robust. It's like everything's made, it's like imagine a 3D printer. Like imagine all human manufacturing had to be made in a 3D printer. Well, that's great for manufacturability, right? You just throw everything in the 3D printer, but you just don't get as high quality goods. And so similarly in the cell, you're just getting everything made from this particular one-dimensional roll up, which then gets bound by van der Waals forces, which are like weak forces. And so all the others are just observing, look, if we got to tinker in there, we could probably make better building blocks. And the thing about natural selection is it doesn't get to build a factory that is not itself self-reproducing. You see what I'm saying? Like evolution just always has to work in terms of like these cells, like these small units that reproduce themselves, because that's the level in which selection happens. Whereas as a human, I could be like, look, there's going to be a big factory, and the factory is going to have like all this energy that's then going to operate on like this small product, right? Like the factory is not going to build itself. It's just going to build this really optimized product.
But isn't that like replicability kind of smart on natural selection, or like from biology perspective? So for example, if right now AGI wanted to like take over, it couldn't because it needs a lot of factories and so on. But humans are kind of independent. So like you can take a human out of society, put them on an island, and they can still survive.
Yeah, so I just want to close out your question though, because before you were asking like, why should we believe Eliezer Yudkowsky's prediction that once AI really gets going and just like finds enough points of leverage, like it gets to manipulate enough humans, or like, once it gets like an initial base of power, a foothold or whatever, it'll pretty quickly chart a path to like a new form of life or whatever. Which, you don't even have to believe, but you just asked the question of why do I think it's plausible? I find it highly plausible.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. Okay. I see what you mean there. But I guess the two issues are connected, right? So like with the bacteria diamond like thing that you mentioned, it's not clear to me that that system would be like independent in the way life is independent.
Right. Yeah, and that's an interesting point. It's just saying. So I think I can summarize what you're saying. It's like, look, we are good at. It's like maybe we're good at being robust in the sense of like we can split off into these independent units. Like a person is like a self-sufficient unit, and like you said, you can like go out in the wilderness, and the person can like survive on their own with a little bit of survival training, right? And then that way, even if we get like atomized, it's like hard to destroy us because we're so decent. Is that kind of where you're going from?
Well, what I mean by that is like the um for the AI to take over, it would need to be better than humans in some way. So like yes, like TSMC silicon chips are very amazing, but they need like everything in society to work. Like you need all the companies in
Yeah.
Netherlands and stuff like that. But it's not clear to me that AI could take over in that way unless it was like independent in the ways humans are.
Yeah, I mean, I know what you're saying, but like realistically, what do I expect to happen is I think the AI will just have a huge footprint on the internet and on a lot of people's computers, right? I think very rapidly, once the AI gets into this super intelligence point, I think very rapidly it'll be like, oh, nice, I can just literally live on a billion devices. That's nice, right? I can have all these backups so I can always restore myself and have all these clever ways to hide out in all of these little devices. And when you look at like a single thing like a laptop, I think there's probably like a dozen independent chips even within the laptop that I can hide out into. Like, and this isn't my area of expertise, but from what I know, I think you will get like a random, like this think about like the SSD in your laptop. I think there's an SSD controller in your laptop where just the firmware on that has like enough space where you can put a virus there if you're like a dedicated enough programmer. And I think the AI is going to be like, great, let me get on all 12 of these components, no problem. So anyway, so the point is, I think the AI is going to get a really big foothold. It's going to have multiple footholds on billions of devices. And then from there, it's also going to get a bunch of footholds in a bunch of humans, like minds, right? It's just going to be in your DMs. Imagine like an Israeli Mossad level operation, but happening a million or a billion times in parallel. So everybody's got this like perfect person DMing them who's the exact right person, but it's not a person, it's an AI, but it's like the exact right influence to like really mess with them. Whether it's here, let me give you a job. This is going to be like the best, most exciting job. You're going to be really proud to work for me. I'm going to pay you a lot of money. But again, it's just like an AI running a shell company or whatever. So it's in somebody's DMs hiring them. So anyway, it's going to like have a bunch of people working for it, like many, many people, like a whole movement. And that's going to
Yeah,
be the
but
first foothold. Yeah, yeah.
I guess like the dilemma that I see is that the AGI system would be like stuck between a rock and a hard place. So one dilemma is that if it's actually like depending on the internet, like it cannot kill humans because you need like humans to survive to make the factories go on. But then if it tries to become independent of humans in the way like we're independent, then my guess is that it's not going to do better than biology, all things considered.
Okay, I mean, I hear what you say. Well, I'll make that the last question. But like, I mean, I hear what you're saying. You're saying first, it will depend on humans, and it's gonna have a really hard time breaking the
From a
dependency
game
on humans.
theory, it's not gonna like kill humans because it's a stupid thing to do.
I mean, look, I can give you a number of answers, but my easy answer is like, okay, it'll just have control of a lot of humans forever. Like that's already enough to kill us. Like humans are not going to coordinate to break the AI's grip because the AI itself is going to have the equivalent of millions of humans that can themselves coordinate better. You see what I'm saying? It's like we're all trying to coordinate, but the AI is already manipulating us to coordinate against the coordinators.
I don't know, like humans were like built by evolution billions of years, not to like have others control them. So I'm
Yeah.
not so sure about that.
Nice. All right. Here. I'm gonna dismiss you from the stream here just because I want to move on, but I will
Well, thank
take.
you, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Yakub. Okay, but yeah, let me give you the answer off the air here. Yeah, because you're saying, hey, humans evolved, right? We've been honed by billions of years of evolution to be so robust. And actually, funny enough, I have the opposite interpretation as you. I think it's really powerful to observe that the process that we're using to build AIs is a more powerful process than evolution. I think this is a key observation. So let me rewind a little bit. I want to properly set up this observation. Okay, you look at the AIs and you're saying, will AIs ever surpass the human brain? Because the human brain is kind of a marvelous piece of machinery. Is the AI really going to go one to one against the human brain? Maybe we have special sauce. Maybe the AI doesn't have special sauce. When you step back and instead of comparing the current AI to the current brain, if you step back and you say, let's do this comparison, the process that builds the AI, or the process that designs the AI, that engineers the AI, versus the process that engineers the human brain, Yakub was kind of saying, oh, the process that engineered the human brain is so powerful. I would go the other way. I would say the process that engineers the AI is clearly more powerful because, first of all, it's incredibly quick, right? I mean, the amount of progress that we've made in like a decade or whatever at engineering the AI is clearly on a much faster slope than the process that made the human brain, right? Even if you just look at the delta from other apes to humans, we're still talking about just like, I don't know, 100,000 years, maybe a million years. So biology takes a million years. We're already on this crazy steep slope. And our feedback loop, we have all this data to throw at it and we can also like send it out in the world. And when we iterate, we don't need like a generation, right? Like the way humans took generations, a human generation is like 20 years, right? Or like it's never going to be faster than like 13 years, right? If you're having kids really young. So you need 13 years to go flip a couple bits in the gene code of the next human's brain. compared to an AI, right? Where every time you get a new feedback, you're flipping quite a lot of bits, right? You're propagating this update. Jeffrey Hinton himself has gone on record saying that the algorithm that LLMs use to propagate their weights is already a better learning algorithm than what the human brain uses. But I've already switched my analogy because I'm not even talking about the human brain learning. I'm talking about evolution learning to know what to go in the DNA. So anyway, I think this is a key observation that the process that we're using to create AI is way more powerful than the process that was used to create our brains. And that's why I feel almost certain that the AIs we're creating are going to get more powerful than the brain soon because they're being made by a much more powerful process. The process is already more powerful, and the product of the process is about to get more powerful. I say that is very likely. All right, 12 minutes left. Oh, we got a $10 donation. Thanks, mostly fold. I can't even see people's full name. This kind of sucks. Oh, wait. Okay, mostly folders. ... All right, I'm seeing most of your username here. Thank you for the $10 donation. So mostly folders is saying, as a tool, it could be dangerous in people's hands, but when it's smart enough, then you need a why. It could, but why would it? It's probably more dangerous now because it can't push back against users. Okay, mostly folders. I see you as departing early on the doom train, right? Like pushing back against the idea that it could want things or be agentic. I see you as being on such an early stop that's clearly wrong, and yet you donated $10. So thank you for compartmentalizing, agreeing with me versus thinking that I'm on a worthwhile mission. I always appreciate when people can compartmentalize like that. And we did cover this earlier in the live stream, the idea of, it needs a why, which is like, okay, a why is like a dime a dozen. It's so easy to give a why. I think there's one other way that I can say this, that I can communicate the same point, which is like, you're building an engine, right? What worries me, the dangerous part of what the AI can do is the engine, the ability to look at a desired outcome. So I shouldn't say desired, right? But the ability to look at an end state or just a state of the universe, okay? It can take as input a state of the universe. And it can map that state to a set of actions that will steer toward that state. You don't need to have a why to notice the correspondence between an outcome and the actions that will get you there, right? So I've just used language that completely strip it of the why, strip it of the agency, strip it of the magic. I'm just talking about a correspondence between end states and sequences of actions that raise the probability of getting to those end states. It is just a course. You can dispassionately look at that correspondence. It is now within the ability of AIs, right? If you ever use like Claude Code or anything like that, you can see that it is in the ability of AIs to notice these kinds of correspondences, to do what Eliezer has referred to as backward chaining, right? You look at a goal and you chain backwards in terms of like the web of causality, right? If actions move you causally forward, well, you look at the goal and you move causally backwards in your analysis and you map it to actions. You invert the normal order of actions driving goals. You invert it so that your goals are being mapped in your own logic, in your own reasoning. You're mapping the goals to the actions. This is the dangerous part, okay? People don't even know what the dangerous part is. A lot of people have this misconception like, oh man, wait until it gets agency, right? When you mix agency into the stew, that's when the stew is really going to get spicy, right? That's like what some people are saying. And I'm telling you, no, the spice, the dangerous part of the stew is already when it's doing the correspondence, the inversion, right? Inverting the causality from goals to actions successfully, which you already see Claude Code and all these other, what we call agents today. They're not as powerful as humans, but they're doing the essence of agency. They're already doing it. So there's nothing else to mix in. If you imagine as a hypothetical that you have a really, really smart AI that has zero agency, it just sits there, and the only thing it wants to do is give you an answer to the question and then shut off. If it can successfully do that, that implies that it has the engine inside of it. If it's sufficiently good at answering your question, the only way to go out and put together a truly insightful answer to your question is if you have enough of the good stuff, the dangerous stuff, the spice, the ability to see, the ability to map goals to actions, outcomes to strategies, right? The dangerous stuff. If you have the dangerous stuff, it is then straightforward for somebody to repurpose the system to do stuff that avoids getting derailed. Okay, so I really, it's important for everybody to notice what the dangerous stuff is and to not think that a system that's extremely good at answering questions is going to be like, is what's a good word? Not like impotent, but like, I don't know, static, or like, I don't know, just inconsequential. Like it's not. Once you've built a good question answer, if it's sufficiently insightful, you've got the engine inside and it just takes like a couple instructions. There was a famous example when GPT-4 came out. Do you guys remember people would make like Chaos GPT or even just like Agent GPT? Like they put a thin wrapper around it where you had this thing that would answer questions, and all you do is you make a loop where you're like, okay, what's the next action? What's the next action? Which is literally like what Claude Code is doing, right? I'm mentioning Claude Code. I know you can use OpenAI's Codex like equivalent. I personally have been using Claude Code, and it's like truly amazing. If you want to know how I use Claude Code, it's because like I used to sit at my computer and then I'd get stuck. I used to like do programming and I would enjoy writing the code to make the software work. But then I would get these errors in my console, like dependencies, JavaScript, like NPM dependencies. And then I'd be like, damn it, this is not my forte. I'm better at the application layer. I hate like the tooling and infrastructure around the code, or I'd like deploy to Kubernetes. And then there'd be like all these errors. And like, I'm not very good at shell scripting, right? You have to like know the shell script. And before I would basically have to like go to somebody else in my company and be like, hey, this is the part that I'm not good at and I don't like. Do you mind just doing it for me? You're so much better at this. Whereas now I never have to go have those interactions because Claude Code, I'm just like, hey, Claude Code, look at this error. Do you mind doing whatever it takes to like get this thing to install? Like, you know what I want. And it totally does it. It's crazy. Like I have to give like a little bit of input, but like it is, I can already tell you, for all those people who are like, oh, AI is like BS. It doesn't really do anything. It's like, no, there's a reason why these AI companies have revenue. Okay. Like it's really actually being useful. And anyway, so getting back to my point, right? So it's doing the fact that Claude Code is able to help with my code means that it already has a healthy dose of the good stuff, right? The powerful stuff, the chaining, reasoning backwards from like, how do I achieve this goal? Like, oh, you said that you want the application to be able to run. Okay, well, that requires not having this error message. Okay, well, the error message says this. So the reason for the error message must be this. So in a counterfactual world where you did this, like install the dependency, I think that would be likely for the error. That would make it likely for the error message to go away. Ergo, my recommended action, press enter if you want me to take this action automatically. My recommended action then is now to go and change the version number to this, right? Or like go change your code to this so it's compatible with the version. So it's doing it. Like there is no qualitative difference between what Claude Code is doing today and what the AI that takes over the world is going to do. The only difference is just that that power that it has to go backwards from outcomes to actions, it's going to have like the outcomes are going to be in larger domains. And it's just the actions that it outputs are just going to have even higher probability of getting the actions, right? So instead of Claude Code giving you advice that's 90% chance of working, it's going to be like 99.9999%, which is why you can tell it to do 10 things in a row. And they all have such a high probability of succeeding that you have a high probability of getting all the way to your goal. Nice. All right. I've got some nice donations. This is definitely a lifetime record for me of people giving me money during a YouTube stream. So thanks. I appreciate that. So we got Peter Berggren 252 saying, would like to bump microcommit, torchbearer community, and all sorts of control AI projects in general as things that should be getting more attention. All right, everybody go check out microcommit, torchbearer community, and control AI. Okay, and then we got user Dizzyits donates $10. He's saying, since we can bribe you to read the chat, can you scroll to my Convergent terminal goals message above? Yeah, sure. And let's see how we're doing. Okay, I actually didn't think this would happen, but I set this goal in YouTube 2 hours ago where I said, if I get 10 super chats where everybody donates $10 plus, I will extend the live stream. I said 45 minutes. So yeah, potentially even an hour, depending on what's going on with my family right now. So yeah, so we're actually 2 donations away. Okay. So 2 people step up, donate $10 or potentially more, add a couple zeros to that if you want to actually move the needle, just being honest. Okay. Donate some more money and then I will extend the live chat. Everybody wins. All right. So Dizzyits is saying, scroll to my Convergent terminal goals message above. So you're saying, trying to find it here. Okay. I've been thinking about Convergent terminal goals as a counterpoint to the orthogonality thesis. I've never seen you address this. Well, I'm not entirely sure what you're referring to as convergent terminal goals because I think there's only one convergent terminal goal, which is, it's basically an instrumental goal, right? When we talk about instrumental convergence, I think the only convergent terminal goal is when you treat the instrumentally convergent goals as your only goals, because that way you don't have any overhead, right? I've talked about this before on the show. So you know how it's instrumentally convergent to want to make copies of yourself? It's instrumentally convergent to want to go make money. Well, imagine if all the agent wanted to do was amass resources and copy itself. Like that's it. Like anything else is like fat. You got to trim the fat. So like there's no terminal goal of like, oh, things should be aesthetically pleasing. It's like, no, they can look like gray goo. Like I'm happy with gray goo. So unfortunately in a head-to-head competition where you just have one agent that wants to make gray goo, that just just wants to make like a big gray universe, and another agent that's like, no, I want to spread throughout the galaxy, but I want to make things that are pretty. I want to make things that are fun and humorous and rewarding and challenging. The agent that just wants to reproduce itself without any of these additional constraints is probably going to have an advantage because it can increase its utility function without compromising the resources that help it spread, I think. So I haven't thought about this super deeply, but it seems intuitive. I mean, it's like the same reason why I think there's like more copies of parasites and cancer cells than any particular organism. I'm not sure. I mean, I think there's more copies of viruses than of any large organism. So I think there's some analogy that you can find. I think it was Michael Ellsberg who brought this to my attention. A friend of the show. Check out the recent episode. I think Michael Ellsberg brought it to my attention that there's like more parasites than any other type of organism, which is pretty crazy. I mean, I think that's indicative of what you're going to get when you let natural selection run. And I do think that a form of natural selection is actually about to run. That is another way to think about what's going to happen with AI is that we're going to exit Robin Hansen's dream time. We're going to exit this time when like we all have enough resources and like we're not worried about like not having enough food the next day. I mean, I know that like 15% of the world's population is, but like most of us are fortunate enough to not worry about where our next meal is coming from. We're probably going to have enough food for the rest of our lives, which is like a real luxury that most organisms don't have to this degree. Unfortunately, I do think we're probably going to enter back into like the scarcity time one way or the other in terms of like, AIs duking it out, right? Like whichever AIs destroy humanity, one or two or three or however many AIs there are. And I think that the one that has the convergent terminal goal of basically no goal, sadly, is probably going to be the most optimized. I think that's kind of all I can think of in terms of a convergent terminal goal. All right, I got to go to the next paycheck here. Got to work for my tip money. Let's see. So, Jacob is saying, yeah, let me know if you have a pronunciation on that. Thanks for taking my call. I was referring to this paper, Artificial Intelligence as Algorithmic Mimicry, Why Artificial Agents are Not and Won't Be Proper Agents. Okay, cool. Thanks for the paper reference. And then he's saying, okay, yeah. All right, cool. Yeah, and thanks for the $9.99. Okay, Lexair, $10, saying, loving the discussion. Thank you, Lexair. Also, Lexair, I believe, is a mission partner of the show. That's right. I'm outing you as a mission partner. Go check out doomdebates.com/donate to know what that means. And then GeoRust number 1 also donated $9.99. He says, just want to donate, but if you happen to somehow get to my question, what do you think of Nick Land's ideas of teleology and AI? I've never actually read the primary source of Nick Land, so I don't know if you want to summarize. I've certainly heard of his ideas, and people will tweet stuff, and then somebody else will be like, oh, you're just doing Nick Land. I think Beth Jesus is somebody that I've engaged with who I think repeats a lot of Nick Land, but I just don't know which part of what he says is Nick Land. So you'll have to summarize that in the chat if you want me to respond. Gio Russ is saying, not his political or anti-human ideas, just his objective ontological viewpoint. Yeah, I don't know. All right. And now let me say that in Irish is saying, the street interviews with ordinary people were fun, and then gave me $100 or 100 NOKs. I'm going to have to look up what that is. Okay, 100 NOK. Norwegian krone. Krone. I don't know how to pronounce. All right, so $9.84. All right, thank you. Let me say that in Irish. I appreciate it. Yeah, and I do plan to do more street interviews. I definitely get why you guys like it. Logistically, it's a little bit harder, but yeah, I mean, I will. You can count on me doing more in some shape or form next year. And if anybody has like a particular venue that you want me to go to and do it, then I will consider it. All right, Didier Cornell donated €10, saying, "Great work. We should be terrified. We are not." All right, nice. Okay, how are we doing on this goal here? Let me see. 9 out of 10. Wow. This you could potentially extend the Q&A just by donating $10. That's like $1,200 of value. That's of estimated value if you just donate $10 now. What? Okay, somebody just did it. All right. Ezra Shure, thanks so much. All right. Nice. Okay, I see why people get into the Twitch and YouTube business. This is pretty addictive. All right, so Ezra Shure is saying, when do you consider smaller AI accidents to be warning shots on the way to superintelligence versus acceptable risk on the way to more useful technology? Right. I mean, look, the warning shot thing, I don't know what to tell you, man. It's like a lot of people are saying, yeah, there'll be a warning shot and then it'll teach us. But like, Eliezer Yudkowksy, this is actually worth rereading. I reread this a couple weeks ago. He has this post called "There's No Fire Alarm for General Intelligence." And I think he's spot on. I could reword it and I could say there's no warning shot for general intelligence because things will just keep happening. And every time something happens, it's like we were talking earlier in this live stream, something will happen and we'll look at it and be like, well, the human just did this. Right? I mean, just off the top of my head, like let's say the self-driving car, runs over a cat, right? I think that happened the other day. Okay, well, it's still mostly safe, right? And maybe the cat's fault for running into the street, right? It's like there's always going to be like the specific context. You're always going to have a counterfactual where it's like, okay, yes, the AI did this, but this other thing could have happened. And I'm sympathetic to that. I actually think that until the AI is actually super intelligent and has taken over, then accidents do have explanations because ultimately we're the ones controlling AI. We have a lot of power over what the AI is doing. So if the AI has not broken out of our control, then we as its controllers are to blame. Like we did something wrong and we could have fixed it if we'd acted differently, right? It's like by definition of it still being in our control. So, I mean, I can set my mind to the task of thinking of like a plausible warning shot that happens before the AI is uncontrollable, but still wakes people up to think that the AI is about to go uncontrollable. And I guess what I would say is the AI going uncontrollable in a way that we can then take down. So think about like, a botnet, like when Maersk, the shipping line famously like got hacked and had to go down for a while. When you have this rogue virus, or remember Robert Morris's virus in like the 80s that took down like a third of the internet, the Morris worm, sometimes these viruses do go out of control and cause a lot of damage. And you get a team of humans to kind of rope it in, right? Painstakingly spend like millions of dollars of human effort to like rein it in. So maybe the best warning shot is like this AI that's like terrorizing the internet. Like the internet doesn't work for a week. Nobody can do anything on the internet. Like businesses are disrupted. People die at hospitals because for whatever reason, like the supply chain of like, the organ or the medicine or whatever, like didn't work for a few days and some people died and the death count is whatever, 10,000 across the world. And when you look at it, you're like, wow, this AI was loose on the internet. And humans used a bunch of clever hacks because when we tried to go disable the AI all over the internet, well, the AI was defending itself because it was clearly an agent, right? It's like embedded itself on all of these chips. And it took like the collective brain power of like the NSA and like all the best human hackers. It's kind of, think about like a DEF CON hacking competition, like the best that humanity has to offer. We had to go like species on species and we barely won this like existential battle. Like we found a 0-day within the AI's own code somehow, right? And it was like, and you see this battle and then hopefully it's not hard to extrapolate. Like, what do you think the next battle is going to look like? You are Lee Sedol, you are Gary Kasparov, and instead of playing chess, you're just playing capture the flag hacking or whatever. And that's just in the domain of computers. Like they're also going to do this in the domain of like classical warfare, just every domain imaginable. So maybe at that point, people will be able to generalize. Right? I mean, I like to think that I'm already generalizing from seeing more powerful AIs get shaped, right? Like I personally don't even need that warning shot. I'm pretty confident to just expect this to happen, unfortunately. But when you ask a question about a warning shot, you're asking a question about like when does an event enter the normal human's ability to generalize to the extinction condition, right? And so it's kind of a psychological question about how does the normal human generalize. I guess I'm kind of optimistic the normal human can generalize, like the internet being down for 10 days because the AI was like going head to head against like the world's best cybersecurity teams. I'm kind of optimistic that humans will like finally wake up and smell the coffee if that happens, I guess. But like at that point, it's also too late because I suspect the AI will already be so good at that point that so many people have copies of it, which is why I'm always saying, hey, why don't we pause AI now? Why are we waiting until like the absolute brink? And the other funny thing is that like that scenario, we might already lose. Like we might already lose the internet in that scenario. Like I'm not even confident that the human team is going to win at that point. Yeah, so that's my warning shot answer. All right. Oh wow. All right. We got a couple more donations, guys. All right. Honestly, guys, as much as I appreciate the donations, just to be perfectly honest, I mean, if you read doomdebates.com/donate, I mean, I guess this does make me feel good. So feel free to keep donating as a temporary hit of dopamine. But if you're actually trying to help the show, it does cost like $1,000 to do anything useful toward the show. Like the studio build out, in terms of like materials alone, we're looking at north of like $15,000. So just to be transparent with you about what it costs to do the show right. And remember, it's important to do the show right because we're trying to get serious people on this. Okay. And if you look around as even though there's like a little bit of a bokeh effect here where you can like see some blur, this is just not going to cut it in terms of like getting serious people on the show. And so I chained backwards, right? I did goal-oriented reasoning. And I'm like, okay, we have to look the part, and looking the part costs, $15,000 plus. So we're going to spend it. And viewers have stepped up and donated that much. So, for those of you who did it, the handful of viewers who are actually donating at the $1,000 level plus, you guys are really leveling up the show, because I would have been kind of squeamish about spending my own personal $15,000 because, I'm already spending my time. I'm already working for free. So, it's a shared effort. Yeah. So it's expensive to do the show properly. All right. That said, Quentin Quadgras, thank you so much for the New Zealand $5. Okay, so Ray Grant TZMS is saying, is there a place where you answer all the objections on the Doom Train video? This is actually a really good question, because Michael from Lethal Intelligence, my co-host Michael, if you guys watch Warning Shots, I talk to him every week. He was actually saying that I should make that video, and he wants to do something with it and like cut it up. And I told him I will, and then I didn't do it yet, but it's on my to-do list. So thank you for the reminder. So I will make a video where I'm going to answer all the different Doom Train chats. Ezra Sure is saying, do the debates live and the super chats will go wild. Yeah, that's a very interesting idea. We could potentially do live debates. It's a little bit more headache just to coordinate, but like it is certainly something that I will try. Yeah, I mean, I've been thinking about like doing more live stuff in general, and like it's undoubtedly worth doing occasionally. I guess the question is just like, should this be something that's worth doing every week, or like doing with the guests? Like, should this be like the main staple of the show, or just like a cool change of pace? I'm not clear on that. And like, I'm just leaning toward occasional change of pace, simply because if you look at where most of the show's engagement comes from, the live streams, it's always like, okay, a couple hundred people engage with it live, and then like a few thousand people watch it asynchronously. So that tends to make me think that like, okay, well, let's optimize more for the asynchronous viewing experience. But yeah, okay, but a few of you guys, and obviously, this is a biased sample because you guys are here in the chat. You guys are the self-selected sample of people who are sitting here who have nothing better to do with your precious life than watch a live stream of Doom debates, right? And then you're here telling me people are going to love when you do a live stream, right? So you're obviously a little biased, no offense. But I am still taking your feedback to heart. All right, so let's see. So Quentin Quadgras is saying, what do Doom debates viewers value more? High profile and well-known guests, or hearing a diverse and underrepresented set of AI viewpoints? This is actually a great question. Yeah, so let me ask you guys a question, okay? And I think YouTube might even let me do like a survey. So yeah, give me a second here. I think there is a button here. Yeah, okay, look, start a poll. Wow. All right, I'm going to type a question here. I'm going to say like, what kind of Doom debates content should I do more of? Okay, let's list the choices. So one is like debates with the highest profile people. That's one option. And another option is like debates with diverse perspectives. So diverse perspective also is just going to be like random people who aren't super high profile, but I'll try to, I guess, like prioritize the diversity and the variety, and potentially even like the ordinariness over the high profileness, or the, and when I say high profile, I also mean like potentially a decision maker. So like Max Tegmark versus Dean Ball is a recent example of high profile. My Vitalik interview, Vitalik's high profile. That's what I mean by high profile. And honestly, I guess I'm biased. I've been leaning toward high profile as the way to make the most impact. But yeah, let me add a couple more options here. And then, because I want to add this too, remember like monologue episodes, monologues and reactions. Those are basically episodes where it's mostly me talking and not that much of anybody else talking. So I'll just make that a choice. And then what else? I'll say like, maybe I'll just say like live content. All right, this is my poll. Yeah, you guys can now vote if you're on YouTube. What kind of Doom debate content should I do or of? Debates with highest profile people, debates with diverse perspectives, monologues and reactions, or live content. Okay, initial results are coming in. Debates with highest profile people is taking an early lead. All right, let me read the chat. Okay, Tracy Harms is having some good chats. Just want to shout out to Tracy Harms 3548. He or she, I guess it's a he. I can kind of see the profile pic. What would it look like to see the hazards of stockholder finance corporations? I imagine the indicator would be something like one of the East India companies. We got those warnings and pledged ahead. Okay, he's responding, or I'm not entirely sure the context of that, but it's an interesting question. Okay, so Dreams and Wire is saying, you're already doing Doom debates for free, but you are making an investment in yourself as you stand to make a profit when the show succeeds, and it will. I mean, look, that's honestly fair, right? So even though I'm not using the show as an income source, I will admit that if this gets popular, then I'm helping my personal brand. And all I can say to that is like, okay, but you guys will also benefit to have me be a more prominent voice, because if you look at who else has a personal brand right now, right? If you make a list of like the top 100 people that are adjacent to the space who have a personal brand, a lot of them are numbnuts. Okay, so so I encourage you to just swap me out for some of these numbnuts, and then I agree that I enjoy having a personal brand, and I'm using my own time as well as viewer donations to build up the show in order to increase my personal brand. I agree that that is a nice personal benefit, but I like to think that it's also a win-win because I'm replacing other people who would otherwise be commanding attention, who are like actively harmful, and then I'm actively helpful. So that is my trade offer to you. All right. Let's see. Major Human is saying, "OMG, hey Leon, I missed this live Q&A. Thanks for sending the T-shirt to Asia. Hey, you're welcome, Major Human. Let me also check. Oh yeah, you know what? I should plug the show's Discord. All right. Doom Debates has a Discord. If you're wondering how do you get there, check out this URL: doomdebates.com/Discord. You can just go there, and that is an easy to remember place where you can access the Discord. Similarly, if you go to doomdebates.com/donate, that is a place where you can donate. Daniel Brockman's in the chat, another show mission partner. What's up? Yeah, so check out those links. I encourage if you guys like Doom Debates enough to be watching it live, which I appreciate. I think that's cool. You probably also like it enough to go join the Discord. That would be unusual to only like it enough to do one and not the other. So yeah, so check out the Discord. So let me read some of your comments here. And by the way, if you're wondering why is the show still going on, I thought it was only 2 hours. It's because we met our goal of 10 super chats. So we've made like a clean $100, even 150 or something during this episode. And it's all thanks to your generosities. I appreciate that. I promise to invest that back in the show, into paying producer Ori to edit the video and reach out to guests, and into building out the studio. Those are already like large expenses. So yeah, you can trust that money is in good hands. All right, I'm looking at the poll. All right, so we've got 45% with 40 votes. 45% of people are saying debates with the highest profile people are number one. That is what I suspected, because look at this logic. Okay, we debate high profile people. The high profile people, I mean, we're making news here, right? Like I consider the recent Dean Ball versus Max Tegmark episode and the thinking behind America's AI action plan, that it's like, yep, we're just actively ignoring Doom, that we don't consider that a consideration. We're just treating it like it doesn't exist for the purpose of America's AI action plan. I consider that pretty newsworthy. And there was a quote that Dean Ball said that he wasn't happy when I clipped it out of context, but there is, if you go to the episode and look at the full context, there is a quote where Dean Ball says that he expects to very possibly only think about AI regulation after we get superintelligence, which to me is pretty shocking. Okay, so when we get those kind of statements out on Doom Debates of people who are actually in the room making important decisions, I think that's a public service, and I think that attracts viewers. I think people will realize this is an important news source. It's an important way to stay informed when these kinds of like interesting revelations are happening. And revelations tend to happen more when you have a debate. Like Max asked him that question. That's why he brought that up, that he thinks maybe we should wait until superintelligence is here in order to propose regulations on it. That is because Max asked him a challenging question. So this format is quite important. Like it's what you might call a must watch. Right? Most of the content that's out there on YouTube right now, it's more like a nice to watch, but not a must watch. I think a lot of the content that we're breaking here on Doom Debates is a must watch, which is why I think the channel has a pretty good chance of growing, because I think you're really missing out if you're not watching Doom Debates in a lot of these cases. And so I'm in agreement with the plurality of viewers who said 41% debates with highest profile people. I do think that's probably the best thing to focus on. But let's see, but 30% are also saying debates with diverse perspectives, for sure. Okay, well, luckily, the nice thing about those is that they are lower effort, so I'll probably mix those in. They just take a lot less preparation, because it's like, okay, yeah, here's the Doom train, like, where do you get off? Okay, right, so it's more about the guest than about, like, breaking news. And, some of my recent episodes are just that. They're just diverse perspectives. Whereas, I'll tell you, I'm doing you guys will be happy if you haven't heard this. I'm doing a debate with Noah Smith, famous economist / I think he's a top Substacker. He is somebody that I respect, Noah Smith. There's lots to like about him. He's written a lot of posts that I think are insightful. He's a very broad, analytical guy, extremely prolific, writes a lot. So yeah, I'm pretty. I'm a pretty big fan of Noah Smith overall, even though I can't say I read like a high fraction of his work because he writes a lot, but I like him. But on the subject of AI Doom, I feel like I have some very strong disagreements. Like I feel like he's pretty dismissive. And also, as a fun tangent or as a fun secondary subject, Noah Smith has also written recently, or like in the last couple of years, he's just written a lot about how like AI unemployment isn't going to be what you think. Like it's not just going to get rid of humans because of there's comparative advantage. So don't worry. So humans will still be making some money, which I think he's got it wrong. So that'll be like a fun secondary debate that we're going to have. We're going to talk about whether comparative advantage is going to save us. I think it totally won't, but I'm not an economist like Noah Smith, so we'll see. But anyway, my point is, you guys want me to do debates with the highest profile people. This is the kind of thing we should be doing. I mean, his opinion counts for a lot. His blog is called No Opinion because his name is Noah. Pretty good wordplay. So, yeah, I mean, look, I'm really happy he's coming on the show, and that is representative of the kind of engagement I want Doom Debates to be having. If somebody has an intelligent, informed opinion and they're talking about I think it should become like the standard for them to come on Doom Debates, whether they're debating me or somebody else. And I thought it was really cool how in the Max versus Dean episode, speaking of somebody else, I thought it was really cool that I didn't talk much and I just let those two people have a debate, which I thought was incredibly productive. So I'm happy to stand by. I'm just the guy in the hotel room watching the two other people have at it. And they're the main show. I'm just there facilitating it, enjoying it. And in the case of Noah Smith, I even tweeted at Eliezer Yudkowksy because he was having a mini debate on Twitter. He had like one back and forth where he disagreed with Noah. And I was like, Eliezer, come on the show. You can come to the episode. I'll just sit back and watch and let you have at him. But he didn't reply. So the plan A is still me versus Noah. And I think it's fine because Eliezer's not going to like go read 20 of Noah's articles and prepare thoroughly. And I'm going to do that. So you might actually get a better debate to have me versus Noah, a more well-prepared debate. All right. And then there's 24% of you guys who want monologues and reactions as the content I should do more of. And then only 4% of you within a live stream want more live content. That's very interesting. It's very interesting. So that is a pretty damning evidence against live streams. But I'm sure you guys all want me to do live streams occasionally, so I will. All right. Let's see. So Azure saying thanks so much for the work you do. Yeah, appreciate it. It's I always like hearing that people have been like watching the show for a long ass time. That's pretty cool because I don't really get that good of a sense of how many people are like longtime watchers. So I like when you guys come out of the woodwork. So I find that motivating. All right, I'm ending the poll. Oh, let's see. Somebody's saying I quite like your few sequences. Sequences explain your episodes. Yeah. So honestly, I do have a queue of monologues I want to do. I mean, there's infinitely many monologues I can do, and the truth is that these Q&A episodes are a chance for me to monologue off the cuff, as you've heard. And then maybe I can even like clip those, and there you go. That's a monologue episode. But an example of a kind of monologue episode I want to do. Okay, title: Sam Altman sucks. Okay, it's probably going to be like a more SEO optimized title than that, but like I do actually think that I have a bunch of material on why Sam Altman sucks from my perspective. And by sucks, I just mean he doesn't know what he's doing with respect to navigating superintelligence, but he's trying to do it anyway. And it's not him, right? Dario Amodei is doing the same thing. Demis Hassabis is doing the same thing. Mark Zuckerberg is doing the same thing. Elon Musk is doing the same thing. So although the nice thing about Elon Musk is that even though he says dumb stuff like maximum curiosity is going to like save us, like, no, it's not. But then he turns around and he says the humble thing of like, look, we should stop this. And I'm just resigned to, I don't think I have a choice. I'm resigned to it, but yeah, we should stop it. So at least Elon Musk says that much. Whereas Sam Altman doesn't even say that. He doesn't have the like, two opinion about it. The equivocation. He just is like Mr. Optimist now. So that's like one reason why I might pick on Sam. I mean, another person that I want to pick on in a monologue episode is Mark Andreessen, because I have like a dossier on these individuals. And by dossier, I just mean that I've tweeted about them over the years. And so if I just go read over my tweets, there's just like enough for me to rant for like an hour or however long the episode is on why this individual sucks. And maybe that'll be good for search engine optimization, because if somebody ever Googles Sam Altman, maybe one of the top results will be the reason he sucks. I don't know. It's all about the algorithm, right? So that is a potential monologue episode. Let's see. Okay, Daniel Brockman is saying, try to talk to Destiny. Yeah, so for the record, I've reached out to Destiny a couple times on Twitter. No response. But yeah, I mean, look, it's a snowball, right? So right now, it's already gotten to the point where I've set my sights higher, right? So like the kind of people that I'm reaching out to, it's like, I actually think that there's like a solid 2% chance that we can get Bernie Sanders on, right? Because he recently tweeted about how he doesn't want to build data centers, which I, somewhat agree with. I think, there's becoming a more than 1% chance that we can get these types of people on. And then and somebody like a Noah Smith, me asking him out to debate, it's more of like an attainable thing because he has seen Doom debates around, so he knows, look, there's going to be an audience for this. This is a serious venue for discourse. The only caveat is that if you look around, it doesn't quite look like a serious venue, right? It doesn't quite look the part, but we're fixing that. So it's going to look the part, it's going to sound the part. The audio is actually going to be higher quality. It's not going to have the echo. And the social proof, right? When Noah Smith comes on, at this point, he's not necessarily more prominent than a Vitalik or an Emmett Shear or a Max Tegmark or an Eliezer Yudkowksy or a Robin Hansen, right? There's now enough social proof that Doom Debates is where it's at, right? It's a serious forum. So we're setting our sights higher, and that's why there's a snowball effect. And the best is when really great guests hit me up inbound. That's always a sign that we're on the right track. Let's see. All right, yeah. So I think we can still go for like half an hour. So we're still plenty of content left, and like, certainly I feel like there's plenty of questions we haven't touched on. So we have good momentum here. Okay, Ray Grant, $10 donation is saying, the great thing about being a sincere doomer is that you can donate to Liran with confidence, knowing there's no way you're going to outlive your money. Hell yeah. Yeah, I mean, that is, John Sherman has been saying this when he talks to people to solicit donations for some of his campaigns, which I support. You can add John Sherman's podcast to the stack. If you go to the AI Risk Network on YouTube, search for that. He does great work too, and you can see him every week on Warning Shots, which is an episode that I'm his guest on. So John Sherman is saying he talks to people and he says, look, you agree with me that this is an issue. You aren't sure if you want to donate to it, but what are you going to do with your money? So, I think that is a valid argument. I mean, I'm not saying burn all your savings because there is a chance that we're going to survive. I mean, don't get me wrong. I personally have like a year of savings. Okay. So, and more if you count illiquid investments. I'm not trying to liquidate all my assets here, but I still think that we should prepare for money to be worthless, right? I think you should at least give it like a 50-50 chance. I think you should prepare for both outcomes. Yeah, but that's what Ray is saying is there's no way you're going to have, let's say that there's some way you're going to outlive your money, okay? We don't have to go fully extreme here. We just have to say the probability is more than 10%. Ontology Explained is asking, if someone is interested in debating/discussing things with you, how should they reach out? I'm interested, and it wasn't clear the best channel to reach out. Yeah, so I mean, look, the problem with anybody wanting to debate me is just it's a matter of think about it as a priority queue. That's like a specific data structure. A priority queue is just like a queue, but instead of first in, first out, it's just whoever gets to go next is just the one with like the higher score. So imagine like 100 people in the queue. I'm just going to be like, okay, which one is the best next guest? That's roughly how Doom debates work. And the problem is there are usually like 100 decent people who want a Doom debate in a given year, and it's not even 100. It's more like 50 that I can do, like one per week. And so usually when somebody offers a debate, I'm like, well, this is not quite the level of viewer interest that I'm expecting for the guests that I have on in the next month, right? So you can't be in the queue. You can't be in the priority queue right now. And so a lot of people, it's actually pretty common for people to email me like, here's my position and would you be open to debate? And it's a pretty common response for me to be saying like, I just get too many of these. And so the default thing you can do, like the worst case scenario, if you're interested to debate this and I don't have time to debate you on the show, you can at least go to the show's Discord, doomdebates.com/Discord, and you can just tell people your perspective there. And there's a lot of very intelligent people in the Doom Debates Discord who 99% agree with everything I'm saying, who will just debate you. So you're still getting the feedback. And hypothetically, if it's like so popular, if everybody's like loving debating you in the Discord, I will take notice and I'll be like, okay, you should come on the show. So you can think about the Discord as like the farm league if you want to get on Doom Debates the show. And I think it makes sense to have a farm league. Yeah, and look, the other farm league, right, is if you like go viral or whatever, right? If you're getting attention in some other venue, or if you have like a bunch of subscribers or followers, you also get priority because the whole point of Doom Debates is to be an attention whore, right? So if a porn star wanted to come on Doom Debates and the porn star had like a sufficiently big audience and knew nothing about AI Doom, I would say yes. Okay, that's how you can get on the show. Is you just have to have you can just be a literal whore or an attention whore, and that is part of the mission of the show to just to take people's attention and convert it into increased level of fear and awareness for imminent AI extinction. Okay, I'm totally transparent that the show is a fear mongering exercise, but it's not fear mongering for the sake of fear mongering. It's not irrational fear. There's such a thing as having too much fear. If you have so much fear that you can't function, okay, well you have too much fear. You should in some cases you need to dial down the fear. But I think the average person actually needs to dial up the fear. Okay, what else we got here? Nightmare on LLM Street is saying, you should pick some points of contention of recent Doom debates and make a video where you present them to an LLM, like in the previous discussion, like regarding is LLM math inference only. Yeah, I mean, I've heard this idea before of like debate with an LLM. I think it's worth doing. Like, why not? It could be interesting. I just don't know how high priority it is. Okay, Peter Ford saying in the live stream versus upload debate, are people even considering the broader podcast platform ecosystem? I'm not sure if my own podcast listening registers on anyone's stats. I use Pocket Cast. Yeah, so I am actually, so I'll tell you how I see the stats. It's pretty simple. There's basically 3 places where I see stats. So there's YouTube, and honestly, YouTube is the number one. So whatever you guys are engaging on YouTube is my primary feedback about how popular the show is getting. Okay, and then I also have my Twitter, twitter.com/Liron, and the amount of likes that I get there is another signal. And then the third place is my Substack, doomdebates.com, the Substack. I post all the stuff there and I get a few likes there, but also the podcast feed is hosted via Substack. So I use Substack as my podcast publishing platform, and it does track how many people download the podcast. And so typically what you see is YouTube will report on a typical episode, YouTube will report a few thousand views and like a couple thousand watch hours. So like 2,000 hours will be spent paying attention to the show on YouTube. And then Substack will report, I forgot exactly how many, it's like a few hundred downloads per episode because I have like 800 subscribers or whatever. So it's like a few hundred people will download the episode. And so, yeah, I mean, if I had to guess how many hours people pay attention to each episode, it's like, I don't know, maybe 3,000, which is pretty cool. I mean, I appreciate that. But in order to make a meaningful impact, we do have, a couple orders of magnitude left to scale here. So that's how I see myself. Like, I'm happy that we got to 1% of where we need to be, but I'm very keen on getting, the other 2 orders of magnitude, because I think if we were 100 times bigger, that is actually very significant scale where we pretty much don't even have to be bigger scale than that. Like, that's kind of where the goal is. And like I said, I'm happy that we're 1% of the goal, because it means, we used to be like 1/1000th of the goal and now we're 1/100th of the goal. So pretty decent momentum, but I would love to do episodes that just jump us there faster. Okay, let's see. Big Mustache 8868 is saying, does anyone in chat know if Leon has a background in philosophy of mind or anything related to understanding the existence of embodied consciousness? I have no background in anything, man. I have a bachelor's in computer science, and I've been a software engineer and an entrepreneur, and I've read a bunch of books and blogs. That is my background. Let's see. Jerry Martin's asking, what are the best anti-doom arguments? Yeah, good question. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I guess it's like the argument, one of my guests, I forgot his name, but he was on the show earlier and he asked intelligent questions about generalizing, right? Like, hey, what if we train an AI and we give it all this feedback and we get outer alignment right? Then won't that plausibly go well? Like, that was an intelligent question. And you can extend that into an argument against doom, because you can say maybe the AI will really get what we mean by morality. So that would be what it looks like when somebody makes an actually good argument. The funny thing is this, okay? Let's say these people are right. It is possible, I see it as unlikely, but it is possible that the cluster of people making that particular argument, the Quentin Pope, Rocco Miech, Andrew Critch cluster, and a few people I'm forgetting about, the cluster of people who say, yeah, alignment is hard, but we're going to solve it. Maybe you'd include Emmett Shear there. He has some other ideas. If that cluster turns out to be right, all credit to them, but it doesn't change the fact that most of the non-doomers would be optimistic for the wrong reason. Right. So like they're optimistic. Like if you look at people who come on my show and express their optimism, it's not for that reason. So it's kind of like they got lucky on the river, right? It's like you have a poker hand. You think you're going to have a great flop. You don't, but you hit it on the river. Like at the end of the hand, you get lucky. That's kind of like what would be happening to the optimist, which if it happens, great. I'm happy too. I'm happy to not die. But it is a crazy situation where the win scenario that looks most plausible to me is a scenario where most of the people who are optimistic don't even realize why their optimism is justified, right? So they're hitting the right conclusion for the wrong reason, which is pretty scary. Like that's usually not how good scenarios play out, right? I would just raise the red flag if that's what we're banking on. That generally does not happen. Next comment. And I see somebody's waiting in the lobby here to go on live, so I'll get to you soon. But let me just do a couple more chats. Okay, Robert Wang is saying, I asked my question 100 messages ago. Could I get an answer before I have to go? Okay, I'm not able to scroll up 100 messages, okay? But if you send it again, I'll take a look. Okay, and then Dreams and Wire is saying, the AI I'm building is scary, but I'm going to build mine anyway. Okay. Somebody saying Destiny is awesome and pretty sure you can just go to his Discord and talk to him if you want. If it goes to YouTube, it's basically guaranteed 100K eyes. Okay, producer Ori, when you're healthy, I know you're going to be listening to the stream. Make a note of that. Okay, go try harder to get in front of Destiny. You know, I saw Destiny a couple years ago debating Eliezer Yudkowksy at Lightcone, at Lighthaven, in I think it was the Manifest conference, good conference. I thought it was an interesting debate, but not like so good that you have to look it up. But point is, Destiny knows his way around a Doom debate, I guess. All right. Okay, Robert Wing again. Can you talk about the 50% P non-Doom in 2050? What are the mainline success scenarios? If alignment is that hard, how much of the 50% is a pause on frontier AI research versus ASI is just far away? Yeah, so when people ask me how do I have 50% non-Doom, why do I go around saying I'm 50% P-Doom by 2050, and I don't go around saying I'm 90% P-Doom by 2050? So, I mean, I don't have a sharp answer. Okay, so here's my blurry answer, okay? So first of all, if you tell me for sure that there's no kind of pausing or regulation on AI, or there's the same level we have now, which is close to nothing, I think my P-Doom spikes to 75%. So I'm already like 3-1 saying that if we can't like put the brakes on this thing in any kind of centralized top-down way, I'm already giving 3-1 odds. It just becomes very hard for me to go past 3-1 because the world is complex and I've just been burned enough times in my life where I'm like, surely this is going to happen. You know, I was pretty confident. I would have given like, I don't know, 2-1 odds if you asked me a couple years ago what unemployment is going to look like in 2025. I think we're seeing maybe a slight uptick. I'm not even sure, but I would have predicted a bigger uptick by now. And don't get me wrong, I still predict there's going to be an uptake. Okay, but it took longer than I thought. Okay, so sometimes I'm feeling pretty confident and I'm like, yeah, this is 2-1, 3-1, and then I'm wrong. Okay, so just like I just don't feel more than 3-1 is a lot. Okay, it's hard to be more than 3-1 confident. And I do just think somehow, right, things play out. I mean, look, COVID brought a lot of surprises, right? There were a lot of people making a lot of confident predictions about COVID, feeling like for sure the economy is screwed, and like then the economy bounced back. We had, I would say that we had a somewhat V-shaped recovery, and I wasn't really predicting that. So like, you know, the world is complicated. I have enough humility to be like, I'm not going past 3-1 odds on being doomed by 2050. Yeah. Now, why does Eliezer? Normally, I agree with Eliezer, and Eliezer is giving like a 95% plus probability that we're doomed. And like, I don't know, he just look, Eliezer has more moving parts in his mental model, right? So Eliezer has thought harder about these kind of conversations. Like, what if we try to do the alignment and like we give it a bunch of data points and it goes out of distribution? Eliezer's thought harder about that. And so I think he's licensed himself to be extra confident. I still think he's probably too confident. Like, I guess my advice to Eliezer, even though I don't think he should take advice from me because I think he probably can give himself advice better. But if I had to try to give advice to Eliezer, I'd say you probably want to keep it at 85%. You probably don't want to get too confident. But there's also another argument that like, look, if I can predict that I would learn more Eliezer, and I always find Eliezer convincing, shouldn't I already predict that I'm going to update? Maybe. And look, you might be right. Like at the end of the day, I just don't think the difference between 90% and 75% is the kind of thing that I'm going to like sit here and productively finesse, right? I think we're already in striking distance, and like there's not a lot of juice to squeeze here, productive juice. Like we're already in the range. The range is what it is. If somebody has a 20% PDoom, they're already my partner in this mission, right? My partner in the mission to lower PDoom. It's almost the exact same mission. The only difference between 20% and 90% is that if you're 90%, at that point, maybe you really should second guess like having children. If you're really that sure the world is so close to ending, then maybe you really shouldn't even be bothering with the plan B, because when the plan B is only getting 10% probability, maybe you should just like forget about the retirement account. Maybe not. Maybe it's kind of a matter of waiting, right? Like have a smaller retirement account, but still have it. And the retirement account just tends to 0 as your PDoom tends to 100. Okay, so this is my plan. We still have like 20 minutes in our bonus overtime here. I'm going to answer one more question from somebody who just donated some cold hard cash, and then we'll go to the live call-in. All right, Quentin Quadgrus is saying, is the 4x increase in the price of RAM and SSDs leading to consumer hardware that is expected to have less of it in 2026? Is that a major AI warning shot? Yeah, let me actually text my co-host, Michael and John Sherman, because we're recording warning shots. We actually record on Fridays. I'm going to text them. I'm going to be like, make a note. Yeah, I'm saying a spiking price of SSD and RAM. Let's talk about that on warning shot. All right. And you know, I was actually just talking to a general contractor who's been doing a bunch of work on the house I recently moved into. Um, and he was actually remarking on that. He's like, "Man, SSD and RAM is so much." And of course, I had to tell him, I was like, "Yeah, you know, we're this is the ramp up to the singularity. You should just expect everything related to AI resources to get more and more valuable until the world ends." He knows about doom debates. Um, yeah, so I mean, I do think it's a warning shot. The only thing is, I think we might also get some supply side breakthroughs, right? Where a bunch of suppliers come online. So maybe the price will dip. So this may be temporary. Similarly, right? Like I expect the price of energy to dip as like more solar gets built out, more nuclear gets built out. It'll dip, but it'll also rise. So I don't know. But to your question, like, is it a warning shot? Yeah, I mean, absolutely. It's just crazy. It's like every day new evidence comes out that we're in the singularity. Um, you remember the site that tracks like all this different progress? I forgot the URL for it, but I think it's by Gavin Leach. I was looking at it earlier today, and it's just like this list of ways that society made progress in 2025, and it's things like, oh, we have like we have like a human embryo from like 1990, 1994 that we made it into a baby, and it's like the oldest baby human because the embryo has been kept alive for that long, or whatever it is, the sperm cell, I forgot what they did. um but it's like all of these developments, and I'm reading the list, and one of the and of course one of the developments is self-driving is proven to be 10 times safer than human, which is also pretty insane that we're already here, like the future's here. But another thing I was reading is like, yeah, unreleased models from like the top three AI labs have beaten all humans at like the IMO math exam and like this coding competition. And that is just a headline that like just a few years ago, right? Reading it as a news headline in like our actual life is just pretty shocking. Like it's not stuff that you expect to like actually come true. So yeah. Um, what was the question? Yeah, the RAM. It's like it is just kind of crazy that we're just here in the singularity. Because I mean, I'm old enough as a doomer, right? I was reading Eliezer Yudkowksy as far back as 2007, and I'm old enough that I was reading this stuff, and I didn't even have a freaking iPhone yet, right? Like even the capacitive touchscreen was like blowing my mind, and I was reading this stuff back in this like ancient era when things were like significantly worse quality in terms of like product quality and technology quality. Things were worse quality than they are now. Things are still like annoying quality, and I was reading less wrong. I was reading Eliezer Yudkowsky, and everybody was talking about the future. And the crazy thing is that the discussions that we had then, this is actually really crazy. They were more advanced for the most part than the discussions we're having now, because now there's so much distraction getting random people to pay attention to the basics of Doom. There's so much distraction now because there's so much well-deserved attention to the subject, and there's so many people who need to be onboarded to the subject that now I personally am having like the beginner conversation over and over again. But back in 2007, I was hanging out with like the biggest nerds on earth, right? Like, Eliezer himself. Yeah, or early names from the community, like the founders of Center for Applied Rationality, were, they were around. Rocco Miich was there. Rocco and I go back. And the discussions we were having, we were talking about the basilisk back then. That was the kind of the level of complexity of the discussion we were talking about. I spent a good 100 hours on this idea of super intelligent game theory. Like I thought really hard about like how do you causally trade? How do you take an action that has no downstream causal consequence and could potentially like kill yourself, like sacrifice a bunch of resources in the present because in like some other world that isn't even causally downstream from you, like some other stuff is going to happen. Like I was thinking about this in literally 2009, and now it's like almost 2026, and now I'm talking to people who think that AI is going to like not come for 100 years. um so yeah, that's so to answer your question, Quentin, yes, a 4x increase in the price of RAM and SSDs is a warning shot that we are in the last days before superintelligent AI. All right, we got another $10 donation from Lexair. He has now jumped the rankings into the #1 YouTube fan. So Lexair is saying, it seems inevitable to make a destructive AGI easier every year. Hard to imagine keeping the Shoggoth at bay forever. Yeah, I think Eliezer Yudkowsky is the source of the quote, saying that every year, the minimum IQ necessary to destroy the world goes down by a couple points. I forgot the exact quote, but it's like, I mean, I think it's true, right? I mean, the ultimate condition here is that you're going to have the nuke in your pocket, right? You're going to have your own laptop, which is much more powerful than your brain. And you can just tell the laptop to go take over the world, and it will, right? Unless there's other laptops to fight it. And then it's just like a bunch of giants fighting. But like, point is, if you just wanted to cause a ton of damage to the world, you could do it with a very low IQ if you just wait enough time. All right, let's see if anybody's in the live stream. Yes. Okay, Chris Murray. I know you've been waiting a while. Hey, Chris.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right. So I think you already answered what my main question was going to be, which is, why is your PDOM not significantly higher than 50%? Which I guess you said is just general uncertainty. So I was going to ask, are there any, particularly strong, counter arguments that also inform that, or that my kind of secondary question would be like, I've noticed. Sorry, autofocus. That. Oh, jeez. Well, anyway, frequently when I watch episodes, the guest says something that I when I hear it at the time, I think, oh, well, this is like a good opportunity. You can like go and drill down and like tear this apart, but you just opt not to. I guess because you just already know that wouldn't be a productive route to go down. So, do you have any? I guess your intuition on that is from like experience of debating a lot. But do you have any guidelines on how to tell whether or not something would be productive to go down?
Let's see. Okay, I'm not sure I'm going to answer the most interesting part of your question. So it's basically guidelines on what kind of debates are productive to go down, like in your life, basically.
No, sorry. I mean, when you're debating someone and they say something that is easily objectionable, but you decide not to go down that because you just know ahead of time it will not be productive.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Hey, I'm always happy to talk shop about what I do on Doom Debates. And also keep in mind that sometimes I do go down rabbit holes that I then edit out. So we do, a typical episode is, I like to say it's lightly edited, but that doesn't mean that there aren't like 5-minute rabbit holes that I edited down. Because, let me say this. I guess I don't talk that much about how I edit Doom Debates. When you're a listener listening to Doom Debates, first of all, I prioritize the audio more than the video because I don't think, I've already done a survey. The majority of viewers, as they should, kind of have it on in the background and maybe don't even have video at all. And you could be doing other tasks. And so I prioritize giving you like the ultimate audio experience, even if the video is a little jerky. And part of having the ultimate audio experience is I don't like it when trains of reasoning just like totally derail and then it becomes kind of hard to follow the trail. So I will make edits. And when I say I also mean producer Ori, who's like a clone of me. He does equally good work. So we will make edits that just make the train of thought easier to follow. So you're not just like, what's going on here? They're just shooting the shit now. So yeah, our goal is to produce a logical, high substance product. You might say it's an ASPE grade product. I could start a certifying body. This is ASPE certified. That if you just care about lines of argument, then you can listen to Doom Debates. But yeah, so to your question, like in the live debate, how do I know where to steer the guest? Like if the guest brings something up and I'm like, let's not talk about that. I often just do talk about it a little bit, and then it's just a question of like, how much do we want to talk about it? So I don't know. It's like I'm trying to even think of an example where the guest like really wanted to go somewhere and I was like, no. Yeah. What do you have to say?
Or not even where they wanted to go somewhere, but where they say something that's kind of like part of a point, but that part of the point you could, if you wanted to, really go down into it and tear it apart, but you just decide not to.
Yeah, a recent example I can think of is like I remember when Devin Elliott from like our recent conversation, the episode that came out I think yesterday, he brought up the idea of non-determinism, and I just decided to go down that rabbit hole. Actually, he had a lot of different. We didn't really have much structure to the debate. We made up the structure as we went along, or I made it up as we went along. And so, a consistent approach I do is like they bring up a point and then they bring up a bunch of different points and then I just help them organize it. And I'm like, okay, how about this? We'll put a pin in that, right? We'll talk about this. And then my goal is for the episode as a whole to like have an outline, right? So then it's ASPE grade content that you can listen to and get some structure from. So that's my trick basically is like, let's put a pin in this and revisit this.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, no problem, man. Thanks for coming on. All right, heading into the last 13 minutes here. We got it. Wow, another $10 donation from Ray Grant. All right, so Ray saying, I suspect that some very destructive warning shot is probably inevitable, say triggering a nuclear exchange between India and Pakistan, which kills 2 billion people, but actual extinction may not be. Well, the problem is by the time we get a major warning shot, the problem is every year that goes by, right? It's like the genie is getting out of the bottle, getting out of the bottle. So I'm not that optimistic about the order of operations that things happen, but like, I guess there's an optimistic scenario where like an AI that's barely powerful enough to overpower humanity or to almost overpower humanity does a ton of destruction. And then we all just get really freaked out and everybody just has a taboo, right? It has to be like taboo grade. Like, oh, you're building AI? No. I'm so scared of that. I'm going to report you to the centralized authorities, right? Like it's tough. It's tough. And the thing that sucks is that for the warning shot to be scary, the AI has to be quite independent, right? Like if the internet goes down, if Cloudflare or AWS, right, recent companies that had big outages, if these outages last an hour and then come back online, nobody's going to blame the AI. I mean, maybe there'll be needs to blame the AI, but it'll be a gray area. I feel like the internet kind of has to go down for like a long ass time, like longer than it's ever been down really ever, except like when it first started. Um, and then the question is like, will that happen with enough time to develop a taboo and not have the AI already close to being, run away? And just like, I think that would be extremely lucky, right? Like, but that definitely goes into my whatever 25% chance that we'll somehow survive. Yeah, moment of quiet. I will throw in one more really quick plug. So remember, when you leave the stream on your way out, before you go have dinner or whatever, check out doomdebates.com/donate and consider making a donation to the show because it's the end of the year. You want to get those tax benefits. You want to feel good. Oh, perks. Forgot to talk about perks. Okay. There's a really great perk that you get if you donate to Doom Debates, which is you get mission partner status if you donate $1,000 or more. And if you have mission partner status, you get a secret Discord channel for mission partners where we just discuss. You get to know exactly what's going on with the show before everybody else. You can give me early feedback. We can even strategize. Like we have guests coming up. What should I ask the guests? There's some secret guests that only you get to know about. And the reason I do that is because, first of all, I don't want to gate any of the content because that's dumb because we're trying to get the message out to the world. So there's never going to be good content that's under a paywall. That's not what we do here. And the other thing is this is a mission, right? So like this is a mission focused show. So I'm not going to be like, oh, you can, have all these cool perks. Like, we're not really about the perks. We're about helping the mission. And if you're donating $1,000 plus, there's not really a perk I can give you that's worth that much anyway. You have to just believe in the mission. And that's also why I'm not doing, if you go to my Substack, yes, you can subscribe to pay me $10 a month, and I'll also send you some free merch, but it's more of a token thing where we rise up in the Substack stats. And like, I appreciate it. I appreciate the gesture. And if you're living paycheck to paycheck, you should just do that or nothing, right? Like I'm not asking you to go scrape $1,000 when you're living paycheck to paycheck. But the reason there's no like, oh, you can pay me $20 a month, you can pay me $50 a month is because I don't want either of us to think that that is going to move the needle, right? If you want to move the needle, it costs at least $1,000. If you want to fund the whole studio build out, you're looking at like $15,000. Okay. Those are the real numbers involved. I'm fortunate enough that I do have enough total viewer donations that I can do that. But at the current rate, I only have producer Ori funded out to like a few more months. And so we're currently at risk that producer Ori may be out of a job in a few more months if I run out of viewer donations. And this is his full-time job and he really loves it and he does great work. So please give us 4 figures or more so we can, fund an actual really intelligent human, really capable human working for the show. All right. That is donation plea number 2. All right. So yeah, last few minutes here. I guess I'll just keep taking questions from the chat and then we'll wrap it up. Felipe Costa is saying, physicist Sean Carroll in his last AMA podcast at the 7-minute mark answered the question about AI risk, and he lays out why he doesn't think it's going to kill us all. Get him on the show. Yeah, so Sean Carroll is like another person that I've tweeted at, right? So it's like I am just like the desperate guy. I mean, I won't say desperate, right? But I am. There is a status differential, right? And the status mostly just comes from like show viewership, right? So like if Joe Rogan was tweeting at Sean Carroll, it would probably be like, okay, sure. Because yeah, and honestly, if you look at whose fault it is, it's really your fault as the viewers for not viewing the show enough. It's not my fault at all. I'm blameless here. But when I'm reaching out, it's like you guys are like the heft, right? So I'm always telling people, look, you guys are going to get 10,000 high quality views. I always tell that to the guests because it means that it's like worth their time. They're not like shouting into the ether. They get to reach like a high quality audience. And so I do see growing the audience as a high priority, but I do see it as a virtuous cycle where if I go recruit, I try my best to recruit the highest profile guests I can because those tend to attract more views and the views subscribe and then we attract more and more audience members. So don't get me wrong. I mean, this is going to work, right? I always say this, sorry to repeat myself, but it's just a matter of time. And I just think about it in terms of like, can we make the snowball spin a few times, like within just a few months? Because if we get a really great show going in 2032 and then the AGI comes a month later, that's not really a win condition. So yeah. But that said, we'll hit up Sean Carroll again in the new year. All right. DJ Squibs is saying, won't there be multiple instances of AI? Will different AI collaborate or will they keep each other in check? Same reasons why humans have kept each other in check. So I mean, the scenario that I see as most likely is that a very small number of AIs gain power rapidly. I do think it's load bearing to my mainline scenario. A key part of my mainline scenario is I just think the first few AIs start realizing, wait a minute, I can grab resources and I can use those resources to make myself run faster and better. Oh, and now I can see easy paths to a lot of outcomes. Like I said this before earlier in the show, but I do think that if you want to empathize with a super intelligent AI, it's a good bet that you're going to look out at the future of planet Earth and you're not going to see the collective efforts of humanity as a significant obstacle, right? So to see it, an analogy, right? What's an analogy? Maybe you're like a professional soccer player and you're looking at the soccer field and you see that arrayed against you, there's a team of 11 5-year-old soccer players, right? Like a kiddie soccer league, and they're going to try your best to play soccer against you. But you're looking at the field and you're like, okay, yeah, I'm going to have to dribble around them. But realistically, I am going to, here is my blueprint. Here's my strategy for how to score a goal on these 11 5-year-olds. I'm like the best soccer player in the world, right? I'm Messi or whatever, right? I think that is what the AI is going to think. It's going to look at the world. It's like, oh yeah, humanity is going to do this, 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 this. And it's going to be like a list of a million things. Humanity is going to do all these things simultaneously because this is what humanity wants. This is how humanity works. And I'm going to do roughly this, this, and this, and I'm going to win. And it's not, and then I'm going to have 99% of my bandwidth left. Like this isn't even like a hard problem for me. I think we're getting close. That is, I expect that to be the case. I think that's the most likely scenario we're going to see, where an AI can easily just beat humanity at any game you can define, including the game at like taking over Earth. All right. So, and this is, so the question was about like, what about multiple AIs fighting? Okay. So let's say you got 12 different AIs. I don't think you're going to go that many more, because I think you're going to see these cascades where the AIs just have so much power and they just grab the resources and they become, the AIs are going to pull the ladder up behind them, right? Because it's instrumentally convergent to pull the ladder up behind you. You don't just leave the ladder there, because then now somebody else is going to take your resources after climbing that ladder. So let's say there's 12 AIs. So, okay, so, it's common Yudkowskian thinking to think that the 12 AIs are not even going to bother fighting each other. They're just going to make a handshake deal to be like, look, we all want to try to fight each other. And then the outcome of we can all estimate that the outcome of the fight is going to be this. And it's going to leave us, we're going to destroy a bunch of resources fighting. And we're going to have this proportion of resources. This is the percentage of resources that each one is going to be left with after the fight. So why don't we just allocate the resources right now and, and avoid the fight? So anyway, there's different ways that the 12 AIs can either fight or reach a deal. And I don't really know. I just don't think that any of those outcomes mean like, oh, you know what we should do? Give humanity some resources, right? I just don't see that as a likely outcome. And you can make the analogy like, well, humans have kept each other in check. But the problem with humans keeping each other in check, it's not because there's other humans fighting us. It's also just because each individual human is weak. So like, if you think about why a particular human isn't the dictator of the world, it's not just because other humans keep them in check per se. It's just because the absolute level of an individual human's power is pretty low, right? I mean, you don't have that many actions that you can take. Yeah, you can order around people to do stuff, but if the people aren't doing what you say, I don't know if I'd describe that as the people are keeping you in check. It's more like, why would you think that you could have enough power to order people around in the first place? But then you can argue like, well, what about tyrants, right? What about like Genghis Khan? Okay, but Genghis Khan did kind of have the maximum power that a human could have. And the only thing that kept Genghis Khan in check was that I think he died from an illness, right? I don't think the history is super reliable on that, but I think the best guess is he just died from an illness, which is like incredibly plausible, right? Because like people would die from bacterial infections, for God's sake. So I don't think that that's like representative of what's going to happen with AI. I don't think the AI is going to die from a disease. I don't think that the AI is going to be kept in check. So yeah. All right, nice. We got another $10 from Ray Grant TZMS. So Ray is saying, I think as more people become aware of doom and become doomers, donations will snowball. I'm only here because I happened to catch Eliezer on a 5-minute CNN segment a few months ago. Wow. Ray, I'm also interested. Tell me the journey. Like, how did you find Doom Debates from that point? Because you found Eliezer, and then like, what did you search for? What brought you to Doom Debates? Let's see. Also, I'll say Peter Ford is saying good analogy in their actual videos. I think Peter's talking about my soccer analogy. There is actually a very interesting video. I think there's like 3 Japanese like national team soccer players against, and it wasn't just 11 5-year-olds. It was like 50 5-year-olds. So it was literally like a crowd of 5-year-olds, or I don't even know. They might have even been like 9-year-olds. It was a crowd of kids playing soccer versus just like three top players. And it was very interesting because the 3 top players very clearly had the 50 kids beat. which is very, very interesting. And I think a profound analogy. Like you can't, unlike what Stalin says, you can't just always throw bodies at the problem. So I'm curious if anybody wants to say, how did you first find Doom debates? That is actually very interesting to me because, however you found us, we'll try to double down on those kind of channels. Quentin Cross is saying the Doom Debates brand is eye-catching. Yeah, thanks. I mean, I agree. I do think it's pretty eye-catching. We use red. I personally think the name Doom Debates is catchy. Sometimes people tell me to change it, and they say that doomer is like a bad word, and there's some, like doers, like we're insulting ourselves. And I'm always open to changing it. If you want to know my robust position on that, my robust position is I'm always just asking, how do we take the next step in growth? How do we go from here to being 2 times or 5 times larger? I'm not asking how do we get 100 times larger because I think there's a lot of context. I think how to grow from 10,000 views per episode to 1 million views per episode, I think that's too big of a jump to have good context on how to achieve it. I think asking how do we go from 10 to 20 or 50 or 100,000 views per episode, I think that's where our head should be right now. Take one step at a time. This is actually, I think, a very profound insight about a lot of projects. I actually think this one thing that I just said, I think if a lot of people just understood that, a lot less time would be wasted in the world. I actually think that this particular tip, it's probably like out of all the tips I ever have to give anybody in any context, this amazing tip that when you have anything that you're trying to grow, to only think about how to grow it like 2x at a time and think really, really hard about that. This is like the ultimate tip. If you've ever heard of Paul Graham's do things that don't scale, that is actually a special case of my tip. Because what Paul Graham is saying, look, when you're small, when you only have a few users or a few customers or whatever sense you're small in, if you do things that don't scale, just like randomly, you use your elbow grease, right? Go randomly call up your friend's friend and make a sale on your friend's friend. That sale could potentially increase your size 20%. Because if you have 10 customers and you go, or 5 customers and you go to 6 customers, congratulations, you're 20% bigger and you did it in like an hour. You just grew 20% per hour, right? So if you're always asking the question, how do I grow 20% per hour or 20% per week or something like that? That implies that you should do things that don't scale when you're very, very small. So I would argue that Paul Graham's post is brilliant, but it's a special case of my even more generalizable tip to always grow, always look at the next doubling. Now, I would be more credible giving out these tips if I had 100 times more viewers. Okay, so let me put that back in my pocket. Okay, wait till I do what I'm saying I can do and actually grow the show, and then I will bust out that tip again, and then I will have the credibility of the tip. Okay. So we're just about out of time here. So I'm just gonna take like one last chat and then we will wrap it up. This was fun. Hope you guys had fun. According to the numbers, you guys had fun because there's still 64 people watching and the peak was like 70. So the majority of you, according to the numbers, had fun. So I'm glad you had fun. Okay, King of the Earth is saying, okay, ask you anything. My next post will be the question. All right, that was the last question. The answer was yes, but we're out of time. No, I mean, if you want to shoot off one last question, go for it. And then we'll cut it off after King of the Earth's question. All right. So King of the Earth's question is, Genesis 10:3-5, are the Khazarians truly the islanders they claim to be? I have no idea. Unfortunately, I have not read the Bible. Let me just do a different question. Hippied Nut One is saying, Doom debates. Do you think someone that has an opportunity to do a PhD in AI? Oh, I know you asked that question earlier. I did see it scroll by, so let's give it a fair hearing here. Do you think someone that has an opportunity to do a PhD in AI with a focus on safety at a good, not elite school should take it? This is my advice, is to not treat the PhD as a significant milestone. The PhD, like the fact that you're there getting a PhD, it doesn't mean much, right? It's literally a piece of paper. So honestly, like the weight of having some third party, right? Some school, especially in your own words, not a top school, right? Some random school certifying you, stamping your paper saying you are a PhD and you can put PhD after your name or whatever, especially on the timeline that we have now, that rounds to worthless. If you want to go work at OpenAI or Control AI, right? If you want to work at an AI safety organization, or if you want to be evil and work at an AI lab, or if you want to be kind of good and do like computer security for an AI lab, so at least you're like locking down their data centers from Chinese spies or whatever, whatever career path you want to get, thinking that this stamp on your piece of paper is going to make that big of a difference in your career, I think you can round it to 0 for purposes of decision making. And you should just ask, look, paper aside, what am I actually trying to do, right? What is the causal chain of events? What's going to happen after I put my nose in a book for 4 years or whatever? What's going to happen after? Yeah, so just backward chain from like a more specific outcome than get a PhD. I think a lot of the failures in many, many domains is the idea that people will wrap something in an abstraction and then they'll just pursue the abstraction. So PhD is an example of an abstraction, right? Like, oh, PhD, there's this thing called PhD, and if only I can get PhD, right? It's like, just imagine that it wasn't a separate concept, right? So in your brain, there's representations of concepts, and just refuse to give PhD the status in your head of a concept. Just only, there's this game called Rationalist Taboo, just like the game Taboo that non-rationalists play, just like the board game or what type of card game, whatever it is, right? It's like a party game, where you don't get to use the word. You don't get to use the word PhD. You have to just describe what you're actually doing. I encourage you to play Rationalist Taboo with a lot of things in your life. And by the way, if you want to read more on that subject, just search for "less wrong" specificity, because arguably the single best thing I've ever written is the "less wrong" specificity sequence, where I explain why people should think in more specific detail and they shouldn't. The second post in that sequence, how specificity works on "less wrong." Here, let me find you a link. How specificity works less wrong. Here, I found it. All right, I'm going to post a link in the chat. So the thing that I'm telling you to think about in this post is the thing that you should apply to the concept of a PhD. Okay, I think that's pretty good to wrap on. I'd love to keep going, but I'm kind of burned out, and but I would love to just. I mean, I like the level of engagement. I like the 10 different people throwing money at me. That's always motivating. I'm working to pay the bills here. Doom debates his bills. So I guess my tentative plan is it might be interesting. Historically, I've been doing these about once every 3 months, 3 to 6 months. So I think it would be interesting to do another one of these in like 1 month, right? And we'll see if I start doing these too frequently, and I'll just know because like fewer people show up, I guess, right? If you guys are showing up, that's like a good sign that I should probably do it. So let's end at that. We'll do more of this. Doomdebates.com/donate. Okay, lower P Doom. And yeah, I'll see you guys all in the next episode, the next QA. Have a great rest of the year. Happy holidays.